What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome to Basementside Chats. I'm your host, Deeg, here late night on the other side of the world, here with Mighty Teapot. How's it going, Teapot?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on, and it's going very well, thank you.
I'm delighted to hear that. Um, so, Mighty Teapot, briefly introduce yourself to the podcast audience. What do you do? You're on Twitch, right? You're a streamer.
That's right. I stream Guild Wars 2 pretty much every day. I talk about every aspect of the game, and through its ups and downs. I'll roast the game, I'll praise the game. We'll mess around, we'll run some events, we'll try and have a good time. That's me.
And how long have you been streaming?
How long have I been streaming? That is a pretty good question, actually. Keeping track of time is my only weakness, as quite a lot of my viewers, I'm sure, will be aware of. I think I've been streaming for well, I've been streaming like every day for or more or less every day for about 3 years now.
Okay.
A little bit over 3 years, and before that, I was doing it like a little bit for like another year before as well. So
The
we're
first
kind of
one of your
looking at
streams I was able to find was what the day one of the third raid wing, which would have been in the middle of 2016, I think.
Yes, that was a long, long time ago. Of course, yeah, that was. I think yeah, for some reason I have that entire VOD saved. Actually, it's like a 17. I think it's 17 hours long,
Yes.
or it might be
Yes.
even more than that. Actually, it might be a little bit longer. Because we had the really bright idea because we just finished progressing through Zera, and let me tell you, Zera was an absolute nightmare. The fight was a little bit unstable, and we got it to 10% about 5 times or something ridiculous like that. And then
Oh
every
my god.
single time, the boss, rather the encounter, would crash and kick us all out of the instance, and we'd have to go all the way over again. And obviously, we hadn't got it down yet, right? So we would wipe, right? We'd get stuck, we'd get demoralized. I was like, oh, what is this? So it took us an incredibly long time, perhaps longer than it should have done, to finally take Zera down. And then after that, we were like, you know what? We are so intelligent, we are so big brain that it is time to actually do wing 1 and 2 after that as well. Just finish it off, like get the clear, kill everything. Don't know why we did that, but it made the stream very long.
That's some dedicated rating. Progression? Was it the world first?
This was actually the first time when QT raised their head. In fact, it's
Ah,
QT got worlds first on
QT
Zera.
quantify, right?
I believe Quantify. Yeah, that's right. Quantify, probably one of the most infamous guilds, or famous infamous guilds in the raid scene for sure. Now sadly departed, but yeah, that was the first time they kind of really started rising to fame. Was around Wing 3, and it was my first interaction with them as well. Like, they were in my chat, right? We were kind of memeing it up, going crazy, right? Saying that they were DDoSing us, right? QT was DDoSing us, so we couldn't get worlds first, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was some good fun.
Those halcyon days, dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the days of innocence is not a care in the world. New raids to look forward to on a regular basis. Wow, incredible.
My, how the times have changed.
Indeed, indeed.
So let's back this up. For those of you who don't know, the game we're talking about is Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is an MMO. Uh, it's still largely free to play. I think as time goes on, it gets more and more so. Um, and it's been through quite a journey. So, Teapot, I of course I have so many questions for you. So here's the thing:
Hit me.
you have me at a disadvantage because I've been watching Tea Time for years, right? And I know you. I have 1,000 questions I can ask. Actually, I kind of feel like I should briefly tell you about my experience with Guild Wars, just to lay some brief groundwork. Would you be okay with that?
Sure, let's go.
Okay.
Tell me.
So, this won't take long. Basically, I started playing in 2015. I had played Guild Wars 1 back in the day when I was in college. Yes, I'm old. And in 2015, I went through a weird period in my life where I convinced my wife to play video games with me, and we played Guild
Oh,
Wars 2 together
that's big.
every night for a year, in the year leading up to Heart of Thorns. So I think probably other than release, the biggest year of Guild Wars hype that I've seen. Um, that long stretch leading up to the Heart of Thorns, the first expansion for Guild Wars 2, was where they did those the specialization reviews over not reviews, teases over time, the mastery teases, everything. They kind of played it out slowly. And then of course the expansion hits. Eventually my wife moved on to other things, but I kept playing. I think that over time the goal that I kind of latched onto was the legendary armor from the raid, which I picked away at over the course of the next 2 years after Heart of Thorns, while just logging in for story content, and eventually I did get. And basically, the day I got the legendary armor is kind of the last day I stopped being a dedicated Guild Wars player. I kind of ran out of goals, things to care about. But it's a game that I love, and I still pay a lot of attention to. I watch content about it, even though I'm not playing it, because I love the game. I always wanted more from the game. Um, that's kind of me. That makes sense.
That's the story of every Guild Wars 2 player. Well, the end part is anyway. But yeah,
Why
makes
is
sense
that,
to
do you
me.
think?
Why people always want more from the game?
Yeah.
Uh, because, well, I said this, and I'll be a little bit provocative, seeing as we're on camera. The only way to truly enjoy Guild Wars 2 is to think about the game for what it is, not what it could be. If
Mhm.
you think about where Guild Wars 2 should be or could be, or whatever kind of word you want to use to describe it, you're going to cry. This I would actually make a very strong statement on this, and let's make it interesting. I would go as far to say that Guild Wars 2 is probably the biggest waste of potential I have seen in the gaming industry. Right, I would probably go
Wow.
that far. Actually, it is the ultimate not failed project, but mismanaged project, and
Oof.
project that could have been right uh, in terms of gaming.
Starting out hot. Yeah. Okay. Well, I wondered where you were going to land on it. I know you don't pull your punches. I can see I don't have to do a good cop, bad cop routine here because I feel more or less the same as you do. Although not having to play it every single day, I think I might have a different perspective. Um, so okay, wasted potential. Um, Maybe we can start the conversation about what potential is wasted by talking about what it does well. What in your mind does Guild Wars do well?
The core part of this is the fact that it has the best combat system of any MMORPG on the market right now.
Mhm.
Is essentially the thing that defines it as being exceptional. And in addition to that, it isn't pay to win too. It has a business model that isn't going to destroy you and make you quit the game. So
Mhm.
those two things combined, the ultimate foundation for an online gaming experience.
Uh-huh. So great combat system, 100% agree with that. Uh, Underwater combat, of course, very fun. And so that's the foundation. That's what makes it good. How does it fall short in your mind? And if you
Yeah,
want,
here we go.
we could even take a chronological approach to this, like
We
because
can we can do that, but I'll just swing, man. Let's go.
I think
It's
we
like
should.
I'm about to go big.
So
It's quite simple. The game, instead of focusing on content that utilizes the combat system, it instead decides to focus on essentially story single player content in
mhm,
your online game. So the majority of content that is released is completely face roll and could easily be completed by bots, and yeah, you don't really see stuff like raids, 5-man content, focus on competitive PvP or world versus world. In other words, it's such a tragic irony. Like, the developers tend to focus on everything that isn't exceptional about Guild Wars 2. They'll shy away from it as much as they can, and you even see this with stuff they implement, right? Instead of trying to make players actually understand what a break bar is, they'll just add a mastery that breaks the break bar for you,
yeah,
as
saw
well,
that.
right? By pressing a special action hotkey. They have no real interest, or seemingly lesser interest, in actually driving forwards the combat system and the actual engagement mechanics of the game, in favor of kind of focusing on the narrative, which is not bad. I mean, the story isn't bad; it's well done. I'm not disrespecting the story, and And I would never say Guild Wars 2 is a bad game. It's a very good game. It's just that I don't find the story to be exceptional. Like to be frank, I find myself more compelled by the Warcraft universe, for example,
Hmm.
which is a game again. It's a childhood thing, right? I grew up with Warcraft. But to be fair, I grew up with Guild Wars 2 as well, and I think the stories in Guild Wars 1 were actually more interesting than the stories in Guild Wars 2. I mean,
Hmm.
even ArenaNet realizes this, right? Like, they took them a while to figure this out. But fighting against like these kind of nameless, faceless dragons isn't that much fun. There's not much character development to be had there, and that's why we see a shift to personify these characters a little bit more, with Jormag having more of a personality, and also they tried to kind of retcon in Kralkatoruk as having a personality at the end of the story there as well. That I mean,
Right when you went into his mind or whatever.
exactly. It was like, oh yeah, he's not actually that evil. He's just kind of messed up.
It's
Oh yeah,
Grandpa
wow.
Kralk just
Yeah,
being
Grandpa
crazy in his corner
Kralkatoruk.
again.
Yeah, and that is actually one of my triggers as well. Like this makes no sense to me, right? So the writing in the story, sometimes I do find it questionable, and I find it very, very questionable that we would give like a cute pet name to this like whirlwind of death that is Kralkator. Yeah, we're just going to start calling him Kralk now, even though this is like a world-ending entity, like our complete mortal enemy who was literally killed. Right, some of our best friends, and we're like, yeah, dude, like we're just gonna give you a cutesy pet name, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That's an aside. We don't need to get into that,
Yeah.
but yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter.
Wow. A lot to unpack there. Um, so yeah, the dragon problem is not just a problem posed by the story of Guild Wars. It's a meta problem with telling good stories, right? Because it's hard to care about a nameless, faceless villain that you can't identify with. And to your point, they're trying to bring in identifiable aspects. Um, I I tried to get caught up with the story before we sat down for this conversation, but I only made it as far as Visions of the Past. Actually, the last thing that I did was that that tank escort
Mhm.
uh mission, which has a new system that I'm not that well acquainted with yet. Where when I started it, it prompted me to go public or squad. Is that part of the new strike system the game has?
It's kind of a strike mission, yeah.
Okay.
It's basically more of a long form strike mission. It's more of like have you played Guild Wars 1? Did you play Guild Wars
Yep.
1?
Yep.
The way I view Visions of the Past, or the Steel and Fire, or whatever it's called, it's more like a Guild Wars 1 mission, right? It has a
That's
boss
exactly
at
how
the
I
end.
felt when I was playing it.
You progress through it, right? And I think that was intentional as well, and it's
Mhm.
well done. And this is the whole point, though, right? Yes, these things are well done, but they don't really utilize what makes Guild Wars 2 good,
Mm.
right? There isn't much replayability to these encounters really as such,
Yeah.
because the content isn't very engaging, and it doesn't even have to be very difficult, right? It just has to require input. Like the comparison I would always do to a lot of the story content is, would I enjoy it any less if I was watching a video, right, of someone else do this content?
Mhm.
Would I feel more connected to the story or less if I was just watching a video? And to be honest, because of how trivial a lot of the content is in Guild Wars 2, there is very little difference for me between watching the story and simply playing it, right? To be honest, I'd even lean to just saying, I wouldn't mind just sitting back and watching it, really, because a lot of it is it's non-gameplay, right? Like a lot of the gameplay is simply auto attacking, pressing F, right? And as we talked about a little bit earlier, and the core issue here is that that just doesn't utilize what Guild Wars 2 does best,
Mhm.
which is this capacity to have very engaging combat, right? Like it or not, MMORPGs, there's a lot of killing here, right? Think about all the people we've massacred on our way to level 80, right? And it just keeps up, the body count keeps piling up every day, right? Here in Tyria, and it's the same thing in all MMOs.
Mhm.
And could you have a story-driven MMO? Yes, apparently you can. Guild Wars 2 is evidence of that you can do this.
Mhm.
But is it the best way to go about it? Is it really the way to make the best possible gameplay experience? No, I don't think so.
Mhm.
Maybe I am just a hardcore elitist toxic memer or whatever, but I need something a little bit more, right? I need something to sink my teeth into. Like auto attacking ain't good enough. right? I want to have to coordinate with my players, with my team,
Yes.
right? I want to have to use my abilities in a relevant way. I need to be able, I want to dodge powerful attacks, right? Have my actions have meaning. And unfortunately, in a lot of the open world and story content, your actions are meaningless and your interactions with other players are completely pointless, to the point where if you removed every single player in the open world in Guild Wars 2 and simply replaced them with an AI that was capable of understanding like what the events were supposed to do, not only would the experience be the same, it would probably be better because the bot would probably be better than the average Guild Wars 2 player. So yeah, there you go. We're spitting some fire here today, boys.
Bots don't go AFK through meta events, right?
Exactly. So you've got that advantage going for you.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I liked something you just said about working with others. So if you don't have a combat system that requires you to engage as an individual, one of the other ways around that is to require you to engage as a group. Like I I'm not really an MMO tourist, but I do have a lot of experience in WoW Classic, which I know you do too. And I played WoW Vanilla back in the day. And that's a system that's a game where where the class roles are a lot more dependent on each other. Whereas Guild Wars kind of has this design to say everyone has sustain, everyone does damage. We've seen some places over the years, especially since raids were implemented, where they said, okay, we're going to have some dedicated support things. You aren't just going to be blasting water fields to heal people. But it seems to me that if you can't force an individual to step up and have to learn to play, um, you can't really, because what MMOs, I think, when they're at their best, what they're doing is trying to encourage good gameplay and community interactions by applying friction in the right places. Like, let's think of an example. Um, say I'm in the Barrens in WoW Classic, and I need to get to what's the Night Elf city called?
Teldrassil,
Yggdrasil? Yeah,
Darnassus.
yeah. What's the fastest way to get there?
I mean, to there, that's gonna be an interesting one. I mean, you got to sneak onto the boat on Darkshore, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Also depends on what faction you're playing, right?
Of course,
Um, but if you got friends, you can expedite this, right? What if you have a mage friend that can port you
you
there,
can portal over.
right? So by making it hard to get from point A to point B, it encourages those kinds of interactions. But if everyone had a portal book and just go wherever they wanted in the world whenever they wanted, those interactions would never occur. And those interactions, I think, in MMOs tend to build communities and build social interaction. Which, to your point, if you can effectively replace people in the most well represented, the most yeah, I guess well represented is a good way to put it. Content in Guild Wars 2 with bots. Where's the game applying friction that makes you want to work together? Um, it seems like that's something that ArenaNet chose to go in a complete opposite direction with. Um, and that was a decision that was I don't know. I'm curious what your take on it is because it's changed a lot over the years, right? We've seen a game that immediately came out and said, we're not going to be World of Warcraft. We're going to be something different. That was what Guild Wars 1 was marketed as, the anti-WoW. And then Guild Wars 2 came out to iterate on that. Once they got to a point where with Guild Wars 1, they basically couldn't scale what they were doing any further. That's my understanding of it anyway. And then with Guild Wars 2, we have dungeons. They come out at release. They never make another dungeon again. And instead, they make fractals. Fractals get overhauled at some point, and then they are kind of here, kind of not. Raids, but now they're being maybe replaced with strikes. Uh, it just seems like there's this race to the bottom in terms of complexity. And I wonder what drives that.
I mean, and this is what I really couldn't say, to be honest. I mean, it really comes down to why is anything the way it is? Just because that's the way the developers want it, right? That's their vision for the game, and ultimately, I will respect that. I'm joking around
Do you
here,
think the
and
devs
I'm
want an
being,
easy game? Really?
yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's fine. And I want to make that very clear. This is something that a lot of games come under fire for, actually, like stuff like Sekiro, right? The Dark Souls games, right? They were like, oh, it's too hard. It's not accessible for all the new players. Oh my goodness! But the thing is, right? If the developers want to make a hard game, then that's
Hmm.
fine. They can do that, right? That's completely okay, in my opinion. And the same is true for an easy game. If the ArenaNet developers want to make Guild Wars 2 easy, that's ultimately something that I have to accept as the player, right? Do I have to like it? No. Can I criticize it? Yes. But do I have to accept that that might be the way they want it and the way they
Hmm.
probably do want it? Then yeah, that's fair enough, right? Do I think it's a mistake? Yes. Okay. But if that is their vision, then that ultimately is on them, right? If that's their vision, then they are free to create their art as they see fit.
It's a very zen kind of attitude to have, to approach the world as it is rather than as you might want it to be.
Yeah. Well, we've already said it. It's the only way to be. If you're not laughing, you're gonna cry. So just try and enjoy the ride.
Fair enough, I suppose. That kind of attitude, is that part of like the teapot formula for approaching life, or is that just how you approach Guild Wars specifically?
Um, that is a very very interesting question. Like when it comes down to personal philosophy, I suppose. I mean, okay. I'm a lot less like that. In with regards to other things. I'm much more of a can do. Change reality, seize your destiny kind of guy. But when it comes to Guild Wars 2, I think it is a bit of a special case. I have reached my point of acceptance, and I think this is one tree I can't chop down. Like this is one mountain that I'm gonna have to go around instead of crossing. I don't
Mhm.
think Guild Wars 2 is going to divert from its current path. Uh, I've been, I think I'm fairly qualified to say that I've experienced a lot of what goes on at ArenaNet
Mm.
and a lot of the game's history, and it is with regret, true regret. Okay, not even I can convince them to go otherwise,
Not even the
and
legendary teapot. Damn.
not even me, I'm afraid. And I don't want to make this too depressing. I want to make it very clear. I still really enjoy the game. I really like Guild Wars 2 a
Mhm.
lot. There's
What do you enjoy
no
the most today?
game. What I enjoy the most today? Today I was just, I was trying to trying to convince my guild to try and do some speed runs of the new boss, but didn't go particularly well. But we did our best. We killed the bosses pretty quickly of the festival, and then I just did some PvP, right? A bit of PvP, bit of gaming there. It was, I played some unranked because there's no ranked season on right now, and I felt like
Mhm.
some 5v5 utter insanity.
Mm.
And unranked was what unranked is. It was chaos.
When you're doing that stuff, are you playing with your community?
No, I was just solo queuing today. Normally I
Okay.
do play with my community, but I was a little tired, so I didn't want to get on Discord and yell at people today. So I was like, okay, right, let's just relax, do relax stream and
Yeah.
just chill out.
Yeah, there's a different
Mm.
feeling to that. I totally get that. Your community, we should give them a shout out. The Salt crew. Are you guys on just EU or are you also on NA?
Well, I mean, Soul is retired now.
Oh.
We've now moved on. We've rebranded as Delusional Elitists, and yeah, we have an
Oh,
NA and EU arm of the guild.
excellent.
And
That's a much
hop
better
on
name.
board, hop on board and game.
Yeah. Okay, I might have to check you guys out. Cuz here's my thing with Guild Wars is I have a hard time finding communities to play with personally. Um I don't know why exactly. Uh, I've always chalked it up to it being a game that doesn't form communities well. I think there's also maybe some kind of a part of it where Discord has kind of eaten the lunch of in-game community building. Um, I'm not sure if you've observed that. Like I know there used to be the raid training Discord. I'm sure your community has a Discord. But I don't know.
I
I
think the
kind of
problem
want to.
with it's just the community is kind of irrelevant. In Guild Wars 2, like what do you need a community for in Guild Wars 2? Like what for?
World v world, maybe?
That's probably the only thing that really requires a community. And, that is such a great answer, right? You've fallen directly into my trap. What are basically, where do you find the most communities and the most guilds, for better or for worse? Where do you find them? You find them in World versus World.
Hmm.
That is pretty much the only game mode that really has like a huge amount of actually social guilds that exist.
And why
Right?
is that?
Outside of that, because it's necessary. And this is why WoW Classic, I kind of wanted to go on that a little bit, because when you were talking about, the game kind of requiring people, requiring communities, it was WoW Classic is an amazing example of this.
Yeah.
And also with regards to, it doesn't necessarily have to be individually pushing, because WoW Classic is a very easy game, right? It is not difficult, right? A lot of classes are simply pressing 2 or 3 buttons in their rotation,
Hmm.
right? Some only one if you're unlucky. It is not a
Mage.
difficult game,
Hmm.
but the classes are very reliant on each other, and you as a player are very much reliant on your guild, your community. Like if you want to raid in WoW, and it's a little bit better now, there's more of a pug scene because people kind of know what they're doing a little bit more, so you can still pug raids in classic WoW. But if you really want to get stuff done and get these raids done quickly and efficiently, good luck, unless you're in a guild, right? Good luck. It's just not going to be, it's not going to happen. Like organizing 40 people in a pug group, not going to be a lot of fun, not going to be great. The game necessitates community in a way, and this is something that Guild Wars 2 doesn't do. And to be honest, again, like this relates to the earlier point we were talking about, with ArenaNet's design philosophy. It is my belief that ArenaNet actually don't want to change this. I think they actually like it this way. I think they do want to be the anti-WoW. In the same way that something like vanilla World of Warcraft required you to interact with other players. I think ArenaNet very deliberately made it so that you don't have to necessarily interact with players if you don't want to.
Hmm.
And I think that's actually a perfectly fine design philosophy. The issue is that they made it redundant. Okay. And this is a really important distinction, in my opinion. I would be okay if you could basically access every piece of content, every piece of story, right? And raid or whatever, right? All of that without ever interacting with another human being. I think that's absolutely fine. The problem, though, is when there is absolutely nothing in the game that necessitates you to really group up with other people, or there is no motive to do so. That is to say, there is no real reason to interact with other people except off your own back. And that can work, and you do have that. But I mean, look at the current scene now. It's not looking too hot, is it? It turns out that if people don't need to do something, they just won't a lot of the time.
Yeah, efficiency.
And
Hmm.
yeah, it's efficiency. Like why? Like why would you do that? Like why would you? Uh, there's no real reason to do that. Like for example, let's take like the new map, right? So what you need to kind of look at is, okay, so two groups are going to complete the new map to kill the dragon. Wow, yeah, scary. One group is just a bunch of pugs, right? They're having a good time. They're going crazy, pressing their abilities, doing their thing, right? And the other group is like a super sweaty try-hard group of like 20 friends, all on Discord, try-harding the open world map.
Hmm.
The problem
Nike was
is that
doing that for a while,
those,
wasn't he?
yeah, he was. The thing is, those two groups will get the exact same result, right? Because the map will never fail. It's unfailable by design, right? Like they will not let you fail that.
Hmm.
And also the rewards are exactly the same, right? You don't get anything for beating the boss down fast, right? Getting it done quickly, right? Escaping quickly from the new Frost Citadel or anything like that. Um, there is no reason to do it, right? And that's the distinction I want to draw. I have no issue with people being able to access it, right? For example, if there was some kind of, say, easy mode raid of some kind, right, that
Hmm.
essentially allowed anyone to raid, I got no problem with that. But what I think needs to exist in everything is a an impetus, is a reason to actually improve yourself, right? and to actually try and to actually get invested and care about the game and care about your performance in the game, which is where Guild Wars 2 falls short. It doesn't bother me whatsoever that, some noob, some scrub might defeat Doom or something like that. That's fine, right? That's whatever. But the problem is where there is no reason to be good at the game, right? If I kill Doom in 3 minutes compared to 10 minutes, there should be something in that for me, like
Mm-hmm.
there should be something that distinguishes you from another player who is not as good at the game, right? And that's where the game falls down, and that's where it falls apart, and that's where social structures fall apart
Mm-hmm.
because there is no reason to be good, right, whatsoever. Because people who are completely terrible at the game and complete scrubs are going to end up in the exact same place as you, one way or another, and there's nothing you can do about it. So people just don't care, right? Because there's no reason to care.
Or make your own reasons.
You can make your own reasons, and that works. But the thing is, that doesn't work for very many people.
Right.
And also, it's very difficult to get that started when you're in a community with the mentality of not caring about that.
Right.
A really big thing, and this is where Classic really, is a great example here. In Guild Wars 2, it is an absolute pain in the ass to get people with the right build, right? With the even using food, right? Like knowing what their abilities do, all that kind of stuff.
No
In WoW
inspect.
Classic,
Mm-hmm.
this is normal, right? Like in WoW Classic, you are expected to, do this ridiculous world buffing, right? And to bring all your
Yeah.
consumables, like,
There's a
farm
high amount of
hundreds,
accountability.
yeah, hundreds of gold worth of consumables. You're expected to know the tactics, read the spreadsheet, right? Be on Discord, be communicative,
Get your
right?
pre-raid
Like this,
bis, all that
get
stuff.
grind out all your pre-abyss, all that kind of stuff. Like, this is ingrained in the culture of the game, and Guild Wars 2 has the opposite of that. Like ingrained within the culture of Guild Wars 2 is apathy, right? A is a lack of caring about actually playing the game. And obviously I sound like a bit of a sweaty nerd saying that, but this is again where my personal philosophy kind of comes into it. Like I will never engage in an activity if I'm not going to give it my all, right? I'm going to do my best, right? Like no matter what that is, I'll do my best. If that's in real life at work, or if that's I don't know if that's like racing someone like up the stairs. I don't know, man. Like it's just whatever, right? I like to do well at things. I like to win. I like to try my hardest, right? And I don't like it. I find it a very toxic and unfun environment when I'm
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by people who don't want to try, right? Because it just feels like I'm driving this epic train, right? And then everyone else is kind of like dragging on my heels,
Throwing
right?
shit on the tracks.
We're
Yeah.
yeah, we're not achieving what we should be, right? We're not where we should be, right? We're not showing off the game in the way that we should be, right?
Yeah.
It's just not fun to me, right? In the same way that some people might get enjoyment out of like playing super casually and just kind of messing around and auto attacking and gathering some vegetables or whatever, right? I really struggle to have fun in an environment that isn't quite try hard, right? In anything,
Mm-hmm.
I take my activities seriously. I'm not a particularly serious person, but if I'm in your raid, I will be tryharding, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter at what level that is, if it's a training raid, if that's a speed run, I will try hard. And that's why that's kind of one of the struggles I have with the game is that occasionally I kind of find myself in an environment that I really struggle to enjoy. It's not fun to be
Word.
around people who just don't care, right? Who have apathy. I don't like apathy at all.
Man. Speaking from my heart there too. I feel the same way, dude. Um, I'm not going to give you a counter argument, but let's see if we can make this more interesting. If Guild Wars doesn't succeed in encouraging players to sweat, to learn how to play, and to cooperate, what does it encourage in your mind? Is there something that it does instead?
And now I have to speak slightly differently because this is actually, in my opinion, one of the more interesting design pillars of Guild Wars 2 is that it doesn't as such encourage you to do anything. It encourages you to make your own decisions, right? Okay, I mean, you could certainly say that it implies what you should be doing by the nature of the content, right? Like the content itself is trivial, right? Is very easy with almost with almost everything they put in the game. So you just, oh, okay, like, this is a casual game, right? So like that's what it's encouraging you to do, and not that there's anything wrong with that, right? Like not every game has to be hardcore. In fact, the most successful games aren't hardcore, right? The example I always give, because it's a game I actually enjoy. This is a fun game to play. Candy Crush, right? Like that's not
Mm.
that's not a hardcore game. That's not a challenging game as such,
Hmm.
right? You just match the sweets, right? It's fun, it doesn't have to be hardcore, and the game encourages
But the
you
game has a
to
progression. It has something you can
show.
aspire to, right?
Yeah, you can get all the way to the end, I guess.
Okay, I'm not too familiar with it, except as a meme.
Yeah, it's a good meme. It's a good example because it's an example of a game that is good that doesn't. It can be good without being challenging, right?
Mm.
I suppose what it really comes down to is what I want out of the game, right? And what the individual player wants out. Because Guild Wars 2, it doesn't want to give you that more challenging experience, right? Like ArenaNet don't do that. Which is unfortunate, but the thing is, everyone else is like saying, "Give it to us, give it to us," or rather, some of us are, right?
A
Some of us who
vocal
are still
a
left
vocal chunk
around,
definitely are. And
and
ArenaNet,
that's just
yeah, ArenaNet
it-
hasn't done much of a job of speaking directly to those people, except in the occasional kind of impassioned letters we see, like, "We're gonna do fractals, and we're gonna do raids," or whatever it is that they say. Like, I think that the last one of those I recall was after the layoffs happened last year. There was a letter that came out from Mike Z, I think, where he talked about that stuff. I actually, you remember that? I don't know if you remember this, but I made a meme video of your reaction to those patch notes with "Fear Not This Night" playing in the background.
yeah. In fact, you actually linked this to me on Discord, I believe,
Oh,
or on Twitter or somewhere. As far as I'm aware, yes, I have the critical information. Yeah, I think I even watched it on stream, I believe.
oh, cool, yeah. But I just, I so enjoyed watching you get hyped about the kind of things that we were being promised, right? Um, Speaking of
I
promises,
like
man,
I like to get excited, dude.
yeah, it's clear, dude, and you have to like to get excited to I think it's such an interesting thing, this Twitch lifestyle is I think kind of new to the world. You have I think a pretty strong incentive to play Guild Wars 2 every day, whether you really want to or not. Would you say that's true, or would you say you really look forward to it every day?
In general, I mean, this is oh dear, dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm gonna I'm gonna meme myself here a little bit.
All
But
right.
yeah, no, in general, even when I'm not really wanting to play Guild Wars, it doesn't really matter to me anymore. Like, um, it's more like the active streaming is what I'm really looking forward to, and talking to the chat and making some stupid jokes,
Mhm.
and seeing their reaction to stuff is. I don't really care if that was Guild Wars 2 or whatever really. Like it's kind of whatever people will watch, I'll stream it because I like streaming. I like streaming to an audience. I like having people react in the chat. It is entertaining to me. It's entertainment. Um, and yeah, that's basically it. Like, I mean, there have been a lot of streams, like particularly when I was really upset with the game, where a lot of my gameplay, I just wasn't really feeling like playing the game, right? So I would just like log on, we talk about Guild Wars 2, and I would just like roll a beetle around Grothmar War Downs, right? Like for
Mhm.
like 3 hours. Like that was some good content right there, boys. That's some
Mhm.
good hardcore Guild Wars 2 gameplay. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, it's to me, it's not really about the game at this point. It's about the community. It's about the active streaming and the active engagement with the audience. That is what gets me to press the start streaming button, not the game itself.
Word. I respect that. Um, I think I've seen you stream a bit of WoW Classic, but I was surprised when I saw you turn your stream on the other day and you were main tanking AQ40 with a Thunder Fury.
Yep.
I kind of had the impression that you went hard at WoW and then dropped it. I didn't know you were still going hard.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I kept playing, and I haven't missed a molten core since the first one.
Has it been mostly
And
off stream though?
oh yeah, almost exclusively off stream because I don't really find the end game of WoW Classic to be particularly compelling, particularly for stream content. I find it a
Mm,
little bit slow paced. I like to be able to kind of leap into the action and do that stuff. I still really like the game, but I basically play it just to chill out, just to relax. Really, I find it a very relaxing
yeah,
experience. It's a much slower paced game, and that makes a difference because Guild Wars 2 is the opposite. It's very fast paced. But yeah, no. I stream. So basically, last August, I took a break from the game for like 3 months. And I
from
streamed
Guild Wars,
exclusively WoW. Yeah,
right?
from Guild Wars, and I streamed exclusively WoW Classic. And the reason for this is that I was very, very frustrated with the game. Like, it was, yeah. I was like, okay, right, this is trash.
That was right on
I'm
the
out.
heels of the
Right.
Icebrood Saga announcement at the Moore Theater, right?
It was actually before it. It was
Okay.
before, and then the announcement came a few days later, and I was actually in queue for WoW, in the queue for WoW Classic while we were watching that announcement. So it made a good pastime.
I was there, man.
Uh,
I was at the theater. I live just down the street from ArenaNet, and
oh, that's convenient.
I guess I mean whenever I drive by, I'm like, Guild Wars was made. Well, not anymore because everyone's working from home. But dude, that announcement bummed me the fuck out. I walked in there being like, what can this be? What can they possibly do to convince us that the game is worth investing in still? And the overwhelming sense that I came away with, I know this is just beating a dead horse, but the overwhelming sense that I came away with is that this announcement was planned for another fucking game. And they plugged it in with a last minute Guild Wars 2 stuff to make use of the venue.
I don't know why they even made that announcement, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, okay, right, look, okay, so I've got to take away my kind of friendliness here a little bit and be very kind of hardline consumer, right? Really be a consumer advocate here, because I've talked to Mike Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually I met him at Gamescom a while back, 3 or 4 years ago. Very nice guy, very knowledgeable
Seems
about the
like it.
game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got no issue with Mike Z. I was actually excited when he was taking over for this reason. I was like, wow, this guy knows the game, right? He knows
Mm-hmm.
the game. He knows the community.
He's an
Damn, this
OG.
is super great, right? So I just want to make it no disrespect to Mike Z, right, whatsoever. But he was very clear. He was not the right choice
Yeah.
to present that. He was very clearly uncomfortable, and that's fair enough, right? He was speaking in front of 30,000 people and a live audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
30,000 on Twitch and a live audience too. That's very difficult, right? That's a very scary thing to do, right? So I'm not gonna give him a hard time for that. Absolutely not. But he didn't do a good job, right? I can still say that, at the same time as saying I like the guy, but he didn't do a good job, right? It was not adequate. And also, I think a big part of his discomfort was probably in the fact that he didn't have anything to say, because they didn't have anything to say. Sorry, ArenaNet, you didn't, right? You announced Living Story Season 5, except you renamed it to Icebrood Saga,
With
right? Like,
expansion
seriously,
like
even,
features, we
yeah,
promise, guys. And by the
yeah,
way,
ooh,
we're going to talk about alliances in a few months.
yeah, yikes. Okay, that didn't go out so well. But I didn't even I was falling for the hype, man. I saw that 48-hour count. I was like, wait, hang on a minute. Have they
It
actually
was
got
actually a
something?
pretty cool
Right.
presentation leading up
Yeah,
to
it
it
was.
with
Yeah,
the
it was good.
dragon slowly coming out of the mist.
I liked it. I was like, dude, this
That's
is
good
hype,
shit.
man. I like this. I was like, oh yeah, let's go. I'm ready to watch. Right. And then they just said, like, it was 20 minutes of nothing. Then this fucking guy, right, from NCSoft, looking like some kind of Sith Lord wearing a poncho, comes on and tries to sell me like a title
Funko
subscription for
Pops
the
and shit.
OST. Right. Dude,
Mike
what? Heck?
Mike
Heck?
Sivowitz? Is that guy's
Yeah.
name? Oh man.
And actually, I have a comment on is it Mike Sivowitz there as well, or
I think that
Sivowitz
was
is
the
his name?
marketing guy
Yeah,
from
yeah, the
NCSoft.
marketing guy. Like, I actually watched. I was disappointed because I watched a guild chat with this guy, and he was switched on. Like I was like, wow, I was really impressed. I was
Really?
thinking like the ArenaNet have got no idea what they're talking about. What is this? And then I saw him actually speak on guild chat, and he was giving confident, decisive answers regarding some of like the silly memes, right,
Hmm.
around the community, in particular, like do you know the R promotion, right? Like that, the
Oh
infamous R
yes, of
promotion.
course.
Yeah. And, you know, he completely kept people were, like, making fun of him for that, and he just straight up said, "Yep, that promotion worked. Actually, that was a really good thing. It got people clicking,
I
and it
remember
got
that
people
actually.
clicking the ad," right?
Yeah,
And
now
he's
that you say
and
that.
I can't quote him now on some other episodes, but I really remember thinking like, wow, this guy actually knows his stuff, right? He knows his onions. And he just seemed like very, very engaged, very, very switched on. So I was disappointed when he came on and just tried to sell me a Funko Pop. I'm like, dude, like, what is this?
They
Like,
had nothing.
you can't. They had nothing.
They
The
get 15
presentation was like,
minutes on, like, art and
yeah,
story stuff. That's
it
not
was
how
like
you
40 minutes
sell an
long.
MMO.
It was 40 minutes long, and half of that was them trying to sell us stuff, right? Like, that's a problem, right? Like, that's an issue. But I mean, ArenaNet marketing, like, oh dear, I don't know how depressing you want to go with this podcast, man. But you know, let's not talk about it. I mean,
'Cause it's important, dude. You gotta scrape the bottom, I think, if you're gonna build anything. Like, you gotta be honest with yourself. Guild Wars 2 is a game where I'm always asking myself, "Is today the day I'm gonna get back into this?" And for the last year, the answer has been no. In fact, the only thing to get me to start playing again was knowing I was gonna talk to you and wanting to have a little bit of current context, like, what the hell is a strike? Honestly, after so up right up until that More Theater announcement, I'd been logging in once every few months to do the Living World releases because I still really enjoyed like the map exploration. I think that's the best part of Guild Wars for PvE, honestly. Meta events can be okay, story stuff can be okay, but like just like plinking around the map, finding everything, seeing all the little stories play out. I really like the little labyrinths that they had in Biora Marches, which I just did last week. Those are pretty fun. Um, but this is all single consumption content, right? I know this is one of your bugaboos, is the
Mhm.
lack of repeatable content. Um, but like I'm always asking myself, is today the day I get back into this game? And I think the reason that I stopped, so after I got my legendary armor, which was in around June or July 2018, I lost an aspiration to log in. I lost something to pursue that felt like it was a good goal. And, you know, I had consciously stretched that goal out for almost 2 years because honestly, I could have just logged in and gotten all of my, what are they called? Insights, legendary insights. I could have gotten
Mhm.
all my boss kills done in a few months if I wanted to. It's not that hard to do, right? You join a raiding guild, you log in, and you just play for a few hours once a week with those guys. Boom, done. But I didn't do that. I went from guild to guild. I took weeks off. I came in just to play story for a little while. I kind of just let my mood drag me around because I always had that like little goal in the distance of being like, "Yep, I'm gonna get that armor. It's out there." Having that aspirational bit of content got me to log in and do PvP. Got me to log in and do the story. Got me to log in and do map exploration. Um, to me, that's important. I think to most MMO players, that's important. For example, if you're logging in to do your say your daily gathering, you're not doing your gathering to gather. You're doing your gathering because there is something that you're gathering for eventually. And for me, it was my legendary armor. That went away. I did a story for a little while, and then I dropped it. Um, I think right now, I know it's not the direction we were originally going with this part of the conversation, but I think right now, the only thing to really go for in the game is like World v World memes and like glowy transmutations and shit.
Yeah, and this is a
Auras?
really interesting point. I think this is something that's really ingrained in MMOs, and it's again another place where Guild Wars 2 actually really stands out here. I think that Guild Wars 2 is not a game you should play for rewards. I mean, the rewards are meaningless by design. I think the entire concept of a reward is pointless unless there is some measure of prestige to obtaining it. Like, where is the
Yeah.
joy in obtaining an item if literally anyone, you know, the guy with no arms, right? Okay, or the guy who doesn't even, you know,
This is
who
why I
has
hate
the monitor's switched off, right? You know, like the mouse and keyboard are unplugged. Like, if that guy can get it right, then you know, then who cares,
this is
right?
what I
Like,
love
it doesn't mean anything.
about like WoW before the transmog system. Because whenever you saw like that orc with the ridiculous looking orange shoulders, you know, in Orgrimmar, um, or because I played a warrior in vanilla, I was a raid off tank, and I tried to get as much DPS gear as I could, but all that DPS gear for warrior makes you look like a fucking clown. And some people would see that as a negative, but I love that because you stood out, and people could look at your character and know exactly what you fucking did to get that gear. Your gear told a story. It conferred a status. And the only kinds of statuses there are to get in Guild Wars now are all economic related. With like the what's that egg sack infusion for the
Yeah,
Jarrett.
it's just like the only thing that separates players is like how much mindless content they've grinded out. Like that, I mean,
Right.
it's like, well, no, thanks. You know what I mean?
And
It's
this
like, wow. It's like I'm so impressed, right? You like nuke 10,000 hours on like farming open world.
yeah.
It's like I don't know, dude. Like
And this goes back to what I
that's
was saying about what does Guild Wars actually drive players to do? And it drives them to farm currency for these ridiculous infusions that
and this is the sad thing. It doesn't need to. Like like you got to ask. Okay, why are MMORPGs like this? Like why are
uh-huh.
MMORPGs progression related? And the answer is because it's very difficult to make content that you can replay 1,000 times over that's still fun, right? Okay, like you think that all the guys doing their hardcore Iron Man, right, in old school RuneScape, you know, they like it. They like clicking on that rock 10,000. Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
have a
I love
friend doing
clicking on
that
that rock
shit.
10,000 times, right? Okay, well, of
yeah.
course not. Like clicking on the rock is incredibly boring, right? Like even the hardcore players are going to admit this, right? And the ones who don't are liars. Okay, but here's the thing. I'll tell you what does feel good. Okay, seeing that number go up, seeing
Mhm.
that level 99, that's fun. Okay, that is a big feels good, right? Okay, but the reason is this is because when you have this really online world that has to go on forever, right? Because that's what an MMO is,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to make that fun. Guild Wars 2 actually cracked the code. The game is actually fun,
Mhm.
right? Okay, in my opinion, it's the only MMO that I've experienced like this. I don't have I haven't played many modern MMOs. To be fair, right? I played some World of Warcraft Legion, didn't really like it that much. Went back to Guild Wars 2 very quickly, right? Didn't play Battle for Azeroth, but still, right? You know, it is actually enjoyable to play, right? And what you know, I will live and die by this as well. If you removed every single reward from Guild Wars 2, there's no gold anymore, there's no skins, there's no anything. I would still play the game because the game to me is inherently fun. I do not need a carrot to play Guild Wars 2, and I can prove that as well. A lot of people might say, "Oh, that's bullshit, Teapot. There's no way." I gave away all of my gold for Master of the Arena, and I had quite a lot. I think I mean, you know, and I do this for all of my tournaments, right? Whenever I run a tournament,
Mhm.
I just give away all my gold. I'd say, yeah,
Mhm.
you know, all of my gold is in the prize pool because it just has no value to me. Like, you know,
Mhm.
I play the game for fun. I have no real interest in the rewards,
Mhm.
and this is why again, like, it really saddens me to see so many people treat Guild Wars 2 as you know as a dopamine dispenser, right? You know, like as cookie clicker, right? You know, this is kind of like a slightly pejorative, slightly provocative way I describe MMOs. Is just, you know, people play them like cookie clicker with better graphics, right? They just want to see the number go up. It's just like,
Mhm.
wow, what a waste, you know. It's you know, it's kind of like I don't know. You know, you have this beautiful array of music, and then you just burn it, right? It's like, why would you do that, right? Like, why?
Mhm.
What an incredible waste, you know, to do that, right? You know, it's like playing, you know, again, playing that same beautiful music over like a horrible horrible, you know, headset, right? That you can barely understand, you can barely follow the tune. That's what it is to me. It makes no sense that people would experience this product in this way. Of course, it's not for me to say how people can experience things how they want, but
Mhm.
it just seems like such a shallow and soul crushing experience to only care about the end result, right, rather than the actual game, right? I don't get it. I really don't understand that mentality at all in gaming, right? You know, when I'm playing a video game, it's because I like the gameplay, right? You know, I like playing it. I like the mechanics of the, like, you know, getting like a pat on the head at the end. It's like, why would I care about that? You know, I can pat myself on the head. There's no need for that. No need for the game to do it. You know I'm great,
But
right? I don't need the game to tell me.
what if you got to do something that was hard and distinguished you as different from other players to get a certain reward? Like what if
That definitely
like
changes
what about like
stuff.
Fractal God? that's a hard one to get, and that requires. I mean, are tier 4 fractals hard anymore? I don't actually know.
Tier 4 fractals, I mean, they're hard if you don't know what you're doing, but they're
Hmm.
very easy once you know like how to do them correctly, right? Like, even the challenge modes become very, very easy
Hmm.
once you kind of get the hang of it. But I mean, that's just PvE, right? Like, that's just the
Yeah,
nature of it.
PVE. Once you've progressed, then it's just logging in and doing the motions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, I
that
don't
sort of
know
thing
about.
definitely does change it. But
Mhm.
oh yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, you
Honestly,
go ahead.
I don't know about separating the rewards from the gameplay in MMOs. I mean, that's I really respect the hell out of what you're saying. I think maybe for you, Teapot, a large part of it, the reward you get is like you said, the streaming part. Maybe that's why you don't need the game to reward you as much. Um, am I right about that?
This is actually going to come off as very unusual, and this might be one of the more shocking things I say on the stream. If I wasn't a streamer, I might not even play that many video games, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely okay, right, and I say this every time, and I'm being a bit of an edge lord here because I'm depressed about Guild Wars 2. But no, I wouldn't play Guild Wars 2 if I wasn't streaming.
Okay.
But that's not a slight at Guild Wars 2. I would play way less games if
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't streaming. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I got into really started gaming a lot, playing a lot of video games, was because I was streaming, right,
Mm-hmm.
and messing around on YouTube and kind of getting involved there. I was like, no, this is kind of fun, right? I should get involved and get more involved in the community and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With the game. Like it was that way around. I know that sounds really weird,
I
but
resonate with that.
that's just how it was.
Actually,
Like
this conversation we're having, this podcast, is something that I did because I wanted to enjoy gaming more.
hmm,
I've been going back and forth between different games, different communities over the years. Been a pretty, I don't know, I say dedicated PC gamer since the late 90s. Done a bunch of different things, not just MMOs, but I find that modern games in general tend to have a gravitational pull towards the kinds of design principles we're talking about with Guild Wars, where there's a race to the bottom in terms of accessibility, and in terms of ability to experience the content regardless of um, how what level of player agency is actually required in order to get
yeah,
there.
absolutely. A
And
lot of games play out like movies, right? Like
yeah,
interactive movies.
I have the same
Yeah,
complaint with Destiny. I have the same complaint with Warframe. Two other games I also tried really hard to like. Um, and those are also games that have organized PvE content, PvP too in the case of Destiny. And for me, doing the podcast, and I'm trying to stream too, but that's honestly not something I've really figured out yet. Um, it motivates me and gives me direction to enjoy gaming as a hobby way more than I once did. Um, and it's giving me these kinds of interactions and ways to reach out to people and make. I actually love community building in gaming. I've always loved it. One of my most cherished experiences in playing games in my whole life. When I was transitioning from high school to college, in 2001, I played a game called Team Fortress Classic, which is a mod for Half Life One. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Um,
hmm,
this was in this is an era where almost everyone I knew was playing on dial-up. Broadband wasn't common. YouTube didn't exist. Social media didn't exist. The way we found each other was by going to public servers because there was no matchmaking. And people would wear clan tags, and you just ask, "Oh, what's your clan about? Can I join your clan?" And you would connect it with each other over IRC, a kind of, if you don't know, like primordial Discord, old chat program. It's still around.
yeah, that's what Twitch runs on.
Does Twitch run on IRC?
Yeah, that's
I
what
didn't
the
know
chat
that.
channels are. Their IRC channels is what the the Twitch chat is.
I guess you don't mess with what works, I guess. Uh,
Exactly.
but anyway, I made a clan that I ended up running for 3 years, and these are capture the flag games with 8 or 9 players per side. 30 minutes. We would practice and then play matches 2 or 3 times a week. I played 250 league organized matches. These were matches that were organized by the community because the developer was not providing any kind of a tournament experience. Everything that I did in that game was made by people who played it. that's one of the most rewarding gaming experiences I'd ever had, um, because everyone who was there put in the effort, which is the exact opposite end of the spectrum from what you get when you do a meta event in Guild Wars, where
Leeching.
right, if people who couldn't be bothered to figure shit out, people who couldn't be bothered to install external programs, people who couldn't be bothered to show up at scheduled times, they never even got to be part of that community. It had so many pieces of friction set up to tell players, yes, this is for you, or no, it's not for you. And for people it is for, it actually gives you a very rewarding experience. And there's this, I think, this industry tendency, because gaming is growing. It's never going to be any smaller than it is today, right? Never going to be any smaller. Streaming, same thing. Podcasts like this, same thing. And everyone is so worried about getting a big enough piece of the pie that you have these games that are this emerging trend, emergent trend, I should say, of live services games that try to get as many people as possible. And Guild Wars, and I'm really up on my pulpit here, so stop me anytime. It seems like it tried to take a big bite of the pie to say we want to get casual players playing these open world living world stories. We want to get raiders. We're going to make raid content, and it's actually going to be fun. I think Guild Wars raids are great. I think they're fun. Um, they're not very well rewarded, but the content is fun. Almost everything in Guild Wars is fun to do at least once. There are not enough reasons to repeat it, and there are not enough ways for people to distinguish themselves and form communities. Like, you need that friction. I'm really just ranting, but um,
You need to have an obstacle to overcome, right? You need to have an obstacle that you're going to have to bang your head into a little bit.
you know,
Like,
yeah.
if everything is easy, then, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people like that, right? No, in fact, obviously, people like that. Like, this is the thing. Like,
Do they though?
even if you, yes, yes, and you can deduce this, as it were, or you can figure this out, because that's what makes money. That's what sells. People don't like losing. People don't like. They don't like World of Warcraft Classic, right? They don't like having to, like run, like do like a 15-minute corpse run.
Well,
People
WoW
don't
has a
like that.
huge time component to it. I had to drop it, dude, for that reason. I really like WoW Classic. I hit it hard for like 2 months. I got to 60 with a friend, joined a guild, helped us progress through Molten Core, killed Ragnaros and Onyxia, and then the day after that, I was like, I have to fucking breathe. I need my life back. Um, I do all this shit after a full time job, and I have a wife, and like I had just like too much pressure on my time to do that long term. Guild Wars should be the game that fills the gap.
Why not? I mean, it is a great game just to kind of dip in and out of, right? Like, the game is actually fun,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
You should
and that's
convince me. Let's do this. Do,
well,
do you want to try this?
well, yeah, I mean, well, I mean, sure,
Or not? I
sure. Like,
mean,
well,
we're just bullshitting.
well, yeah, yeah, I know, I get that, but it's if you're not really feeling the game, then you're not really feeling the game, right? But
But I
I know,
am. Actually, I am
I know.
feeling Guild Wars. Like I'm getting back to the story, and I've actually really enjoyed the stuff that I've done. Bram annoys me. Time he's not on
Yeah,
screen
I mean,
anymore for some reason.
when it comes to Guild Wars 2, you just have to go into it with a very different perspective. Like, this isn't WoW, right? You aren't powering up your character. You're playing the game for fun most of the time, right?
Hmm.
Like,
So like I'm
you
playing on my
set your own
warrior right
goals
now.
and you enjoy stuff. Yeah,
I have enough.
what's going?
I have an inventory full of ascended armor and
Okay,
trinkets and weapons. I have legendary armor, so that's not a problem.
okay.
Um, I'm not very rich on liquid gold, but I mean, if I want to get some runes or whatever, I can do that. It's not a problem. Um,
Mhm.
what is the best way for me to get into and enjoy Guild Wars right now? Do you think? Is it to do the streaming thing like you're doing it? Should I try to find a guild? Should I not bother? Should I just queue up for strikes? What do you think the best slice of the game is right now?
This is the truly remarkable thing about Guild Wars 2, and this is where I'm going to really start praising the game. It might sound a little backhanded, but
Do it.
this is one of the big joys of Guild Wars 2. Like, the onus is on you, right? If you're playing something like WoW, well, you do your dungeons, right? Then you do your raids after that. Once you've done enough, you do your normals, then you do your heroics, you do your mythics, then you go and do raids, right? Or whatever order you end up doing it, right? And Guild Wars 2, the game says, okay, what do you want to do? Right? Like this, and this is good design. Like the game is very well designed. Instead of telling you what to do, which is obtain purples, go get the purples, right? That's not what this is. The game says, okay, right, you've got your gear, and now you can go and do whatever you want with that. You want to go play PvP? Great, go play PvP. But if that's fun to you, do that. If you want to raid, great. Your gear from when you quit the game 2 years ago or whatever, right? That still works, right? You
Yeah.
can go and start raiding right now, like literally right now, this second, right? You can go and do that. You want to go play World versus World? Awesome. You can do that too, right? The game really hasn't moved on. You can do that. And this is one of the best design precepts of Guild Wars 2 is player autonomy. You can go where you want to, basically whenever you want to. Like the amount of ramp up time to engage in any kind of activity is very, very minimal. It's almost non-existent, in fact, which a lot of people don't like, right? They like the progression experience of the MMO, but the progression in Guild Wars 2 is the progression of your own skill, pretty much, and actually getting good, as they say. In World of Warcraft, you can wait 2 expansions down the line and you can go and one-shot the boss from the previous expansion in the
Mm-hmm.
raid, right? In Guild Wars 2, if you aren't good enough to kill Doom, he'll still be kicking your ass, right, in 5 years' time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's good design. Like all
Mm-hmm.
content in Guild Wars 2 is still relevant.
Yeah. Still haven't
If
done
you,
that Doom
so,
CM.
yeah, if you really like Veil Guardian, right, great. You can go and do that. If you really like the Ragnaros fight in World of Warcraft, you're out of luck because you're going to one tap that boss now when you go back into that raid wing, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is an amazing, like seriously, like the developers at Arena. Okay, right. I'm just being silly here. Right? I do want to make that clear, right? I'm being a little bit of a meme here, but you know, Arena are idiot savants, right? You know what I mean? Like they have like this brilliant intellect, right? They have this remarkable ability to create absolute magic and then do absolutely nothing with it. I mean, they can tell you what the weather was 7 years ago, right? They can calculate your birthday, what day it was on, right? They have perfect recall, right? Like all these incredible, with these amazing mental powers, right? But if you ask them to get a grip on yourself, right? Get a grip, you ask, what does that mean, right? They just like start grabbing themselves, right? They don't understand like that, they don't understand that it's not a literal thing you're saying, right? Like, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling there a little bit, but just to kind of describe what exactly I'm talking about. It's like they have this amazing ability to make a very good game and then just kind of like, yeah, there you go. That's it, right? We're not really going to drive that, right? We're not really going to push that. We have all this really good design. But you know what? Are we going to capitalize on that? No. Let's go and make something new. Let's go and make easy raids like strike missions that don't do it,
Yeah.
that
That's one
let's
thing
go
I
and do Visions
noticed.
of the First, right? Like I don't know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
dude.
It seems like ArenaNet has like they like to jump around a lot in terms of their design. Where from one year to the next, they have a different idea of what the game should be and how people should be playing it. Um, I mean, we saw that first with the jump from Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2, they made dungeons and they stopped making dungeons. Like, I one of the things that I really remember remarking at was in early 2016, I think it was, when Colin Johansson, good old sword swinging Colin Johansson, um, left the company and Michael Bryan stepped up. Do you remember how the company changed the way it communicated?
Oh, we just stopped doing it.
Yeah. Why was
Yeah.
that? Why do you think they did that?
With a lot of this stuff, like the answer is always going to be very boring, and the answer is we'll really never know. I'm not even sure if I would exactly want to speculate why, because I think I'm not really in the position to really make an educated comment on it.
Mm.
I don't know why ArenaNet went down this road with this
Mhm.
policy.
Mhm.
I think they felt like they got burned a few times because they promised a lot and then didn't deliver. But
Mhm.
you know, the way, okay, I guess it's like a mentality thing, right? If I was continuously messing up, I was like, okay, right, I failed there. I promise I failed. I promise I failed. I promise I failed. Like my solution would be to not fail, right?
Overpromise, underdelivers is
Yeah.
what we see. To flip that, you
And
underpromise, overdeliver.
what ArenaNet decided to do was just to, okay, we're just going to stop promising, right? If we don't promise, then we can't underdeliver. I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't say anything, then if we don't ship anything, that's fine, right? We're not saying we're going to do anything, so
Mhm.
they can't be disappointed anymore. I mean, what really needed to happen was they needed to, get their shit together and get some bloody work done, right, and make a game, right? But instead, they decided just to kind of say, we won't tell them anything anymore. We won't communicate, right? They'll know
Yeah.
nothing, and they can't
Yeah.
complain.
Yeah, like, they didn't tell us that a large part of the company wasn't even working on the game, right?
Yes, and that's a really interesting one, actually. This was a weird development, and I think this would have upset me more, and I would have felt a little bit more betrayed if I hadn't kind of already had my Guild Wars 2 emotional bypass. Because I will say this, like, quitting WoW Classic was one of the best things I could have done to keep enjoying the game. And a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's because you found out the game was trash." Like, no, no, I still play the game. I still really like WoW Classic.
Mhm.
What it did was it gave me some distance from the game, and it allowed me to essentially like unshackle my feelings from Guild Wars 2, and just kind of detach from it a little bit.
Mhm.
And so when this came out, right, when the layoffs came out, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that really sucks, man. But and when the news about they kind of had the game on the back burner, they just didn't tell us. I was like, oh wow, that's that's very cheeky of ArenaNet, but hey, I mean it happens, right? But I think a lot of players really felt betrayed. I think a lot of veteran
Yeah.
players felt very betrayed
It
by
was a
that.
rough community moment.
Yeah, in particular, like a friend of mine, Deroya, Deroy Gaming.
Mhm.
A lot of people in the community will know who that is. He felt very, very betrayed, and that was actually, and not to put words in, I believe this is accurate in saying this. That was kind of like his moment where he was like, okay, wow, actually, I'm gonna take a step back. Like, he's one of the most hardcore players
Yeah.
in the game. I'd say he gets all the ridiculous achievements, right? He farms everything, right? He's always in, and he still does that. He still plays, but that is what that caused him to back off from the game, from the community, and become less invested overall. And I think that was a really, really bad thing. It was a cruel thing to do to their willing community. And to be honest, the way they communicated that, the way they handled that, like it would be very hard, in my opinion. It would be very difficult to say that there wasn't a little bit of disregard for the veteran player base there, right? I believe in the benefit of the doubt, but it is a hard sell, right? That they weren't deliberately withholding that information, right? And kind of disrespecting the
Yeah.
veteran community by not communicating in that way, right?
Yeah.
Like to me, they knew what they were doing, right? Okay, and look, I get it. It's business, right? It makes sense if you think about it, right? They don't want to tell people that, oh yeah, by the way, that game you really like, we ain't feeling it so much, you guys. But hey, keep buying stuff in the gem store, right? Not a good plan to do that, right? Like that's not going to get past the marketing guys. But on the other hand, it does come across as a little bit yikes, right? That was a bit, oh yeah, that's a little bit questionable from the PR side of things because it
Mhm.
failed, right? Like Arena essentially gambled on all of their new products, their new projects, their new game, their PS game, their console game, whatever it was, right? Like whatever. Okay, it obviously
Yeah, we don't
failed
know.
miserably for whatever reason, and we never will know exactly what went down. But yeah, they gambled and were like, okay, we're kind of being a little bit deceptive with the community, but it's okay because we're going to release these new products and they're going to be super happy, so they're not going to care about it.
I would like to talk to
Unfortunately,
someone who knows that story, even
yeah.
offline.
Oh, the leaks, dude. The leaks get the insider information.
Yeah.
But the trouble is that none of that happened, and essentially they didn't do anything, and then they had to kind of come clean, and they got caught,
Mhm.
and it didn't look good. And they endured, for all that I love Arena, I do. I really like the company. I know some of the employees there who work there. I've chatted with them as well, done raids with them, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
For all I love the company, they fucked up, right? They got caught and they got roasted for it, and I hate to say it, they deserved it. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
it came at a very unfortunate time because they were kind of getting roasted after they just have massive layoffs. So it was kind of like kicking a dead horse, kicking a company while it's down.
Yeah, the publisher
But
kicked him, and then the community
um,
jumped on top.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is where it really gets difficult. And this is to the advantage of ArenaNet. I think it's very difficult for a for a consumer, for a player to really go hard on a company. But the truth of the matter is, they seller, you buyer, right? Okay. If they aren't doing something right, then it's
Mhm.
completely on the player to one, tell them they're doing wrong and not feel bad about it, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Like, for all it is, ArenaNet is not your friend. ArenaNet wants your money, right? Welcome to capitalism. That's how it works. I know there are good people there. And you know what? I bet they're all lovely. Okay. I'd love to sit down and have a cup of tea. But here's the thing, all the cup of tea in the universe ain't going to make the game better, right? Okay. That's on them at the end of the day. And it's a really difficult thing to separate the personal, right? The fact that these are real people, right? And balance that with the fact that this is a company and they need to produce a good product, because that is
Mhm.
how reality works, right?
Mhm. Yeah, players,
um,
especially MMO players, they form relationships with the games they play,
mhm.
and the companies that develop them are the custodians of those relationships. And community really did get burned. I remember um, that announcement that Mo made when he really stepped up, at least publicly in 2016. He made a big speech, not a speech, I guess a letter, talking about how there were 3 different content teams doing live releases, and they also had X number of developers working on the expansion too. I remember getting so juiced reading about that. I was bummed that they came in and nerfed Heart of Thorns, right? They kind of went back on the direction of this is actually end game content. Um, it's supposed to be hard out here. And then Path of Fire came out, and then so when I played season 4, episode 6, which was the one where we fought and killed Kralkatorrik, right? And there's the big cutscene with Oreen at the end. The overwhelming feeling that I got was that Guild Wars 2 was supposed to end. The story was supposed to end there. That was supposed to be it for the Guild Wars 2 story.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that got
I think very
fucked
much.
up by whatever ArenaNet's plans were to move over to new titles getting chopped out from under him.
No, I
And
think that's absolutely
that
true.
was a shitty
Um,
realization for me.
and this is what you wanted to talk about later, actually. But there were a few kind of not exactly leaks, I suppose, but a few comments from a certain writer, actually,
Mhm.
who an ex employee of ArenaNet that actually shed some light on this, and this person was very insightful actually on some of these
You're talking
issues.
about Jessica Price, right?
Yeah, talking about Jessica Price, yeah,
And
like
she
she
talked
actually said
candidly
that
about the
they.
company. What did she say?
Well, she essentially said that they were told to write the ending to be it could be an ending, but it could also be open ended, right? Okay, like that was the kind of the brief they had. Like she tweeted
Mhm.
a little bit about this, and obviously probably shouldn't have been saying that, but she was a slightly disgruntled
That bridge was burned
ex-employee,
hard.
I suppose, right? So like, yeah, I don't think she really cared at that point, right? Like what exactly was
Yeah.
going on there. But yeah, like we actually got some really good insight into that. And yeah, it was certainly okay. Do we want to do an expansion or are we moving on? Right. And they wanted to leave it open, right? And then of course they ended up doing it, right? They are doing an expansion to the game. But I think, yeah, if things had gone well, that was it. That was the end of Guild Wars 2. And I still think Arena in a way does want to be free of Guild Wars 2. They have to do this now because otherwise NCSoft is going to get them and pull the plug. But yeah, that was originally going to be the end of Guild Wars for sure. At the end of Arena, it was like, okay, everyone's flying off into the sunset. This is game over, right?
Mhm.
And it was very obvious that was the case. I think.
If that's the case, then because the arc ended with Oreen, ascending into Elder Dragonhood, right? Replacing Kralkatorrik, right? And the Oreen story started in, was it season 1 or season 2?
It's been a while.
Because there was the egg, right? And the master of
Mhm.
whatever with the Zephyrite. I didn't play season 1, and I came at the end of season 2, so that time's a little fuzzy to me. I guess I'm just asking myself, and maybe this is just poking at a wound. I don't know, but I can't stop thinking about it. Is how long ago did ArenaNet know they were planning to end the game? Like, what was? Um, I don't know. I'm a player who got burned, and I want to know why. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm a jilted ex girlfriend, and I want to know what the fuck happened, and I'm never going to get an explanation.
I think they probably knew for a long time. I think companies have very, very big internal timelines, right?
Hmm.
They know a lot more than us a lot earlier. But the thing is, I don't criticize them for this. Like, I criticize them for failing, if that makes any
Was the
sense.
communication
Um,
that sucked? I
well,
think you can get
I,
away with
I don't.
almost anything if you communicate about it, right? Don't you think?
I don't know. Like the thing is, I don't think that they can't just say, oh yeah, by the way, we're working on Guild Wars 3, guys, right? Because obviously that sets an expectation in the community, right? And they obviously thought they could pull it off. The problem was that they failed, because I actually agree with ArenaNet. ArenaNet, in my opinion, are right to get away from Guild Wars 2. For whatever reason, and I'm sure there are a myriad reasons why this is the
Hmm.
case, but Guild Wars 2 is an absolute nightmare for them to develop,
It's a
right? It
dead
takes them a
formula.
long time
Yeah.
to add content. There are bugs, right, that are just misery to work out, right? There are design issues with the game, right? Like, it has aging systems. You've got the lag in the open world now, right? There's a whole,
I
it takes them
noticed
like
that.
takes them ages to work on skins. I think at one point they said something like it takes like 9 months to make an armor set or something like that, and that's why they do outfits now or some crazy ridiculous stuff like that. It takes them
Hmm.
ages to do stuff. Yeah, ArenaNet wants to get away from this. They want to be free, of Guild Wars 2, and I think they were right to do that. I think they were probably trying to do some kind of Guild Wars 3 or some kind of other MMO product, that was going to replace Guild Wars 2.
Hmm.
But obviously that didn't work out. But their intention, their idea was definitely correct. Guild Wars 2 is an excellent game, but it's built on the engine of Guild Wars 1. It's obviously spaghetti, right? People, barely understand how the game works at this point because most of the original developers aren't there anymore. And this is, I'm just going to be clear, like this is not their fault. I'm a developer as well, and look, when I look back at something that I made, like 2 years ago, I'm like, how the hell does this work? Like, what is that? Like, what is going on there? You know?
What do you do,
And when
Teapot?
you're on, I'm a developer. Bit
What
of
kind
bit
of
of C
what do you
sharp,
work on?
bit of PHP, bit of C sharp PHP
Web
developer, bit of
developer?
action. Yeah, back end web developer a long
Cool.
time. But anyway, it's yeah, like obviously that's going to happen with any kind of long term project. It's going to become a nightmare to manage it and to continue developing it, right?
Hmm.
As time goes on. And taking that, taking that away and starting fresh, yeah, probably would be a good thing for the game, right? And they'd be able to do a lot more with a brand new engine, brand new team of people who actually know what all the code does, right? Wow, amazing, incredible, would be great. But yeah, obviously that didn't.
Yeah.
You hate to see it.
Hmm. I'd be excited to play Guild Wars 3.
Yes, Guild Wars 3 would be amazing.
What would they do
The
with it?
trouble is, what would they do with it? They would probably just go in I mean, my fear would be that they would just double down and make the game even more casual, right? Which is probably likely, to be honest. Actually, like as horrifying as it sounds, like this would actually be big, dude. Like, I think that they might even just remove PvP. I think they might keep world versus world, but I don't think they'd have structured PvP again. Like, no joke. I actually think they wouldn't have it. They'd remove at least one game mode would get the chop, right? Okay, because the developers have actually one of the ex-developers, Isaiah Cartwright, who now
Hmm.
works for Manaworks, he spoke about this a little bit,
Hmm.
and he felt that one of the really big difficulties with Guild Wars 2 was how many game modes they had, right? Which was
Yeah.
three game modes. Well, four if you open world instance PVE. So like open world PvP, PvE, instance PvE, and then you have PvP and world versus world.
Right.
And they said that developing all of that in one go was a big. It wasn't. They didn't say he didn't say a mistake. He said it just made it incredibly challenging. So I think with Guild Wars 3, they would chop down the game modes. They'd cut at least one, and I would actually anticipate that they would entirely focus on PVE, which, in my opinion, would be very unfortunate. But
Well, that's their
that's where they
base
probably
right now.
and they'd probably simplify the game. Like and this is a really big problem that ArenaNet has right now, actually, because a lot of people deny this, but Guild Wars 2 was originally supposed to be a hardcore esports PvP game, right? If we go all the way back to the start, they were pushing esports. They wanted it to be a PvP focused game.
And the combat
And
system is built for PvP. Totally.
correct, yes. And because of this, it turns out the game is actually really hard to play, and a few people found that out recently. But the game is very difficult to play correctly, and that does not gel very well with their casual player base,
Right.
right? Because
Would
it
you say it's harder
causes
than
people.
WoW?
It's far harder than WoW mechanically.
Mhm.
Before the WoW people get me, World of Warcraft is a considerably harder game, but mechanically, Guild Wars 2 is harder to play well. That is,
Mhm.
the encounter design in say WoW raids is far harder than Guild Wars 2. There is nothing in Guild Wars 2 that really comes close to say Mythic,
Right.
the Mythic
Right.
Jaina, right? Like
Retail
Mythic
WoW. Mhm.
N'Zoth, right, or whatever it is, right? Like it's not on the level of Retail or on the level of Final Fantasy. But on a mechanical level, yeah, like Guild Wars 2 is super hard to actually play correctly
On an
because it's
individual
just
level.
a lot
For
more,
each
or an individual,
individual player. Yeah.
it's just a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more things to manage in the game than, and there's a incredibly high skill cap because of the way the combat system works
Mhm.
in Guild Wars 2. And this means that most players are very, very bad, right? They struggle a lot at the game. And this is, again, a huge headache for ArenaNet
Mhm.
because they can't push their game mechanically. They can't design challenging encounters because players simply won't be able to do them. I mean, ArenaNet, they kind of like mean themselves a little bit. One of the developers was talking on Guild Chat and they essentially implied that they design a lot of content in the game around auto attacking,
I believe
right?
it.
For open world content. And yeah, I do believe it because they're in a really tough spot. If they make it require even a tiny bit of DPS or healing or coordination, then people just won't be able to do it because of how bad the average player is. This
Mhm.
is something that Mike Z said. I think I think we had a chat with Mike Z at Gamescom. I think this is one of the things we talked about. The average player in Guild Wars 2 does 1/10 the DPS of a good player,
It's a
right?
great stat.
Okay. Yeah, it is a good stat. And also, this is another really, really fun stat. This is one that I love to kind of troll people with a little bit. The average rating in Guild Wars 2, and this is, by the way, this is not, I want to make this clear. This isn't like I haven't been, this is just, this has been stated. Like most people end up in gold, right? Like low gold in PvP.
Okay.
Okay. In Guild Wars 2. Have a
Okay.
guess where a lot of bots end up in Guild Wars 2 PvP.
Higher than
Turns
gold.
out, yeah. No, to be fair, not higher. They used to actually. Like there used to be bots in Platinum, but then like a lot of the classes that the bots could play quite effectively, like Mirage and Scourge, they got nerfed down pretty
Mhm.
hard. But yeah, it turns out that bots in PvP these days tend to end up in kind of like high silver or low gold, right? So the average player in Guild Wars 2 is basically on the same level as a bot, right?
Mhm.
And these bots, when you play against them, they're not good. Okay, they're very, very bad indeed. You do not want one on your team. Okay, you do not, you do not want a bot on your team in Guild Wars 2 PvP. But that is where they end up. They end up at about average rating, right?
Why do people
And that
bot
is
in PvP? What's the
because
incentive?
it's actually a really good gold farm, right? If you have a bot like
Oh.
running 24/7, it generates you a huge amount of gold because the bots get a decent win rate. That's the thing, right? They get like just slightly below 50% win rate. Because
Do you need to win to
players are
farm
not
gold
very
in
good.
PvP?
You don't necessarily have to win, but obviously winning, gets you more,
Is
right?
better.
So yeah, it's better, right? And if you have like a 50% win rate or something like that, then it's pretty viable gold farm. Because playing ranked games actually gets you a lot of gold for finishing your ranked reward thingy, right?
Mhm.
And of course, you also get the reward tracks.
The
You get
reward
gold
track.
for winning,
Mhm. Mm.
right? People even bot or multi-box ATs, right? The tournaments because that if you've got 5 bot
Oh,
accounts playing in
man.
every single daily AT, right? Then damn, that's quite a lot of gold, right? Just
The
go
more I
ahead and
read
do
about
that.
ATs, the more I hear about people fucking selling them, botting them, all kinds of
You know,
demoralizing shit.
I mean, that
Is
doesn't
that
really
really
happen
that
so much.
rampant, or is it just us?
No, 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 no. So the selling thing was a very big meme. Basically, the first monthly AT with the crown was
Mhm.
sold on the NA server, right? It
Mhm.
was they straight up sold it for, I believe it was $2,000, quite a lot of money. It was for oh no, yeah, I think it was like 400 to each of the members. So I guess $1,600, not
'Kay.
2,000, because it was four and then one guy getting boosted. Actually, no, it was 2,000 because the guy was playing on the other guy's account, right? It was like an account share kind of deal.
Mhm.
To actually get the carry there. And there was another incident on EU with a little bit of shenanigans going on with the boat gizmo as well. But it honestly doesn't happen that much, like with the ATs and or like the botting and stuff like that. If you go into like a bot or a multi box in the AT, you're almost guaranteed to win. You're not going to lose to that, so it's not really a big issue. It happened like once, like back in the day, but
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense
and
'cause people
all
people
the
get
and the
get the ATs are actually pretty good, I'm guessing, usually.
Yeah, and well, I mean, they're at least aware of how to enter the AT, which is a good
Yeah.
start. Yeah, in,
Yeah,
in general, it's really not an issue. Like all the players involved were actioned on both of those occasions, so it's like it's not.
okay. But you think they'll get rid of it for Guild Wars 3?
I would not be surprised if for Guild Wars 3 it was a PvE centric game without a lot of PvP interaction.
Yeah, it'd be a shame. Seems like
It would be a shame.
PvP has always been a big part of Guild Wars' identity, even going back to Guild Wars 1.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is though, you've got to ask yourself the question, right? Like, what would you rather them do? Would you rather them have like a really stellar top tier PVE experience, or like a half baked PVE and
Honestly,
half baked PvP experience? You know?
I want them to pick one game mode and do it well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's
I think
Rena's biggest
that's great.
problem is for whatever reason their studio, and maybe there is no studio that can do multiple game
Oh,
modes well. I don't
oh
know.
no. You've fallen into my trap card, my son. Oh, you're in so much trouble now. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to play my trap card. They have chosen,
You
and
gonna
they
roast
chose
me?
open. No, I'm not gonna
Yeah, I
roast
mean,
you, but they have chosen. They've chosen open world casual PvE as
yeah, but
their
they haven't
one game
really
mode to
chosen it.
focus.
We still get
They
new
have
raids once a year. At least we did before Strikes
wha
came out.
I mean,
R-
how
they're done now,
what's the
though.
what's the difference? What's the difference between those two though? Like, how they release like a new map with loads of story like every 3 months, and they do like a raid every like 2 years and a fractal every year.
Well,
Like
I think the
that to
difference
me,
is like
that to me says, yeah, they've pretty clearly made their decision here. Like it's they're not exactly obscuring it, right?
I don't know. Like I guess like I see a game like this, like the one we have today, that focuses really hard on one thing and then kind of has these drop-ins for these niche communities every once in a while as being very different from a game that is narrower in scope and focuses on doing one thing very well. Like what if the whole game was just this open world exploration stuff and there were no dungeons, there were no fractals, there were no raids? What if that was the whole game? And the whole game was built on these open world interactions and it had clearly defined places where players could apply skill or not. But they didn't try to balance. They didn't try to have PvP. They didn't try to have world versus world. Like try to do one game really well. And even though they're kind of applying this formula now, it feels like they're still held back by the need to. If they don't keep these certain content channels going, the community will destroy the game from the outside.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the way they approach releasing content essentially causes the community to make Guild Wars 2 look very bad from an outside perspective, right? It's
And
yeah, this is certainly true.
there's a huge incentive to go to that community. We've seen recently with Summit 1G coming out of nowhere and playing Guild Wars 2, this huge spike in activity for the game, even outside of his stream.
Yeah. It turns out, Arena, that the whole Twitch thing might have something to it. Hopefully they figure that out now. But yeah, it turns out that Twitch is a pretty powerful tool. It's a shame that ArenaNet took 8 years to figure that out, but it is
Have
what it
they
is, I
figured it
suppose.
out though?
No, they
I mean,
haven't.
Summit
That's
just
the
showed up
true
because he got
danger.
sick of VSO, right?
Yes, he is gone again now, though. Unlucky.
Yeah, so I'm playing Call of Duty. Maybe he'll be back.
He's playing off stream, apparently. It's more like the streaming experience wasn't great, which is understandable, right? He had 10,000 apes yelling at him, telling him what to do. Not much fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah, not the way I'd want to try to play a game like that. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying about the idiot stuff on ArenaNet. Um, I could definitely see Guild Wars 3. I just don't. I don't get the sense that ArenaNet knows what they want
Well, I
from
mean,
the Guild
I
Wars
I
franchise.
do. I think they know exactly what they want, right? They're
But
trying to keep as many players engaged as possible. And they're gonna drive the game in a very story-driven direction with a lot of casual content, and they just try and keep people hooked. Because Arena is quite savvy on this. Like they're very acutely aware that every other MMO sucks. Other MMOs, they're not good. Okay, like there's a reason why there's a reason why Asmongold spends his time like reacting to videos and doing mount contests, right? Okay, it's because the actual game itself is not particularly engaging, particularly for a streaming perspective, right? Okay, that is, I'm talking to retail World of Warcraft.
right,
Okay, like
right.
doing like meta activities in the community around the game is a lot more exciting than the game itself, right? Like that's just the way it is. Like Final Fantasy, again, it's basically like WoW, except it's weeaboos, right? Instead of dragons and stuff, right? Nothing
Hmm.
really talking about that. ESO is just scuffed Guild Wars 2, right? Like the MMO genre right now is dead, right? There are no good MMOs. Nothing really on the immediate horizon for a while, except New World, which who knows how that's going to turn out at this point.
Rip.
And this means that Arena is in an amazing position because they have the best product, right? What they're selling on a mechanical level is just that much better that it barely even matters how slowly they release content. That's because people are going to be drawn back to the game to come play the game because it is just more fun to play than the alternatives, right? It's true. If you play World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, you will get more content than Guild Wars 2. Final Fantasy, not so much. You know what? I always lord this over people, but Final Fantasy actually has some very serious content release schedule issues as
Hmm.
well,
Mm.
as it stands right now. Now, to be fair, that is because of a lot of that is apparently because of COVID-19. Fair enough, but still, right? It encounters the same issue as Guild Wars 2, and even World of Warcraft. It's not like they're releasing like a raid every 3 months. Like you'll get 2 a year or so. Now, to be fair, they each have like 10 bosses with a mythic setting as well. But
Hmm.
look, let's not talk about that. The point is that you come back to play Guild Wars 2 after you're done with that because the game is just more fun because the combat is better. And in these MMOs, you're just fighting stuff, right? That's what these games are, right? You fight bosses, you farm mobs, right? You do this, you do that. It is essentially the same thing. And these games are different, right? They're a different kind of car, right? They've got a different ride. The aircon's a bit different, right? The seats are different, right? Whatever. The sat nav's got a different accent. But ultimately, you are going to come back to Guild Wars 2 because even though maybe you only get to drive the car a fairly short distance, right? And you don't get to, it can only go around the car park. It's not really allowed on the open road as much. It's still got the best ride. It's got the best sound system, and it looks really sexy as well, right? Like that's the thing about Guild Wars 2
Yeah,
because
it's a great looking game.
they have the best inherent mechanical core product. It honestly barely even matters. They're like quite dismal release schedule for any kind of instance or like end game content because all the other stuff, one, it's still relevant, right? Like all the fractals, all the raids, you can still play those, right? Like you
Yeah,
haven't outleveled them or outgrown them. They're still fun to play and they will always be fun to play. And the thing is, you'll get bored of the other games because mechanically they're just not as interesting, right? And this is what ArenaNet exploits very effectively, whether they do it intentionally or unintentionally. Like Guild Wars 2 is just inherently more fun to play than a lot of these other titles. And I think they know it. I don't think they're
yeah.
stupid.
That's one
Um,
thing that I think you're totally right about is they somehow nailed the best feeling MMO. Like, and you see that with mounts too. That's another great expression of that phenomenon. Holy shit, the mount system in this game is what the feeling I had with it is why has no other game tried this? Why has no other game done this with mounts? This is so good it seems obvious. Um,
Yeah. And yeah, this is something that Arena again. They have they, like I said, they're idiot savants. They have this amazing ability to create systems better than other people, right? Like they have this magical superpower, where they can say, okay,
mhm.
we're going to do this way better than everyone else. Right now, they chose mounts, which in my opinion is like a huge waste of their like giant brains because mounts are not gameplay, right? Like they're kind of fun to ride around on, right? I won a mount race today, right? Because I'm a god gamer.
They're
Like
not
I destroyed
combat, but
everyone,
they're
right?
gameplay.
Um, oh, yeah, yeah, I think they're a novelty. Like they're a gimmick, in my opinion. Like,
Huh.
I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of why other games companies haven't done this, why other MMOs haven't done this. Because yeah, it's kind of fun. Like you're on your raptor, like it's doing. You feed it a fish, right? It's got some cute animations, but that ain't gonna get you logged in the game, dude. Like that's just not how it works.
That's
Like it
true.
makes for a nice screenshot. It makes for a nice, 1K upvoted post on Reddit, but it ain't gameplay, right? Until you can figure out a way to turn that into content that you're going to want to keep repeating constantly, it's no good for your MMORPG. It will be great in a single player game,
Mhm.
right? It'll be awesome, right? I think, and to be frank, the mounts in Guild Wars 2 definitely put single play. Well, I mean, I think a lot of games have very questionable horse physics in particular, right? It would absolutely put a lot of these games to shame in the way they handle, in single player games. But the thing is, it's a single player gimmick, right? Like, because single player games, you play through them once and it's all about that immersion, about that experience. MMOs are not that, right? MMOs are about living in a world that just kind of goes on forever. And a mount is definitely going to be a fun novelty to mess around with and have a good time with, right? But eventually it's just irrelevant and it's going to fade into the background
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
be a part of your like actual reason to log into the game.
Yeah, and this emphasizes the repeatability problem that you've talked about as well. Um, so if we establish that Guild Wars 2 feels great and that's what draws people in, that's fine. Does that also mean, on the other hand, to you, that the thing that drives people away is the lack of repeatability? Is that the two sides of the sword in your mind?
The lack of wait, sorry, second.
So you're
Second.
saying what brings people back from other games, from other experiences, from taking a break is how good the game feels, right? That's what you're saying. Like it's a great game.
Yes.
It feels good, looks good. Um, what is it that drives people away from it? Is it that lack of repeatability? Like,
To honestly, to be to speak as a self-centered player, it's because you feel like you're not wanted in a way. If you're a raid player or a PvP player, it's very easy to feel like ArenaNet don't care about you, or even don't want you, or actively don't want
and that's
you.
because of the content drip for those communities.
Because the content drip and the way they approach designing stuff for other gamers, right? It's very obvious that they want to push the game in a casual direction, which typically isn't going to include PvP.
Sure.
Um, as well. But yeah, the game does hook you in because of how well it is. And to address the point in chat from Cam,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the 8-year-old fractals, they're not the best thing in the universe. But I think they are still relevant and they still are inherently fun, right? Like for example, a game I've played a hell of a lot would be Super Mario Brothers 2, right? I know this game inside out, right? It's a good game, right? I like this game. I've played it a lot, and I can play that game, and I will have fun, even though I know all the levels. I know how all the boss encounters
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's the same with any old game I play. I've played a lot of Dawn of War, a lot of RTS games, like the StarCraft 2 campaign. I can log on to that and I can have a good time, right? The game feels fun. The game feels engaging to play. Same with other Command and Conquer titles, right? Like I just like the gameplay, right? It doesn't matter that I've done every mission like 50 times, right? They're just fun because they have an inherent level of fun gameplay to them
Mm-hmm.
that can keep them relevant and keep them feeling enjoyable to play. And that's why, even though the content is old and yes, irrelevant or whatever, right? Of course it is, right? It doesn't matter because it has an inherent level of fun to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that allows it to maintain its replayability
Mm-hmm.
and still be an enjoyable experience, even though it is obviously very old and you've done it 1,000 times.
So do you think that the crowd that plays Guild Wars is like very different from the crowd who would play a feel like a RuneScape or the kind of MMO that has a lot of goals and progress but doesn't feel great to play? You think it's inherently different audiences?
Not entirely different audience, but it's sufficiently different that ArenaNet has once again positioned themselves in a very intelligent way, such that they aren't really in any direct competition with any other MMO. In
Yeah.
fact, that they are very much on their own for the experience that they deliver. But even better than that, they are positioned in such a way that Guild Wars 2 is exactly what you want after you rage quit another MMO, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a
like
comfort
that's
MMO.
it is a comfort MMO, right? Like after you rage quit
Fuck, you're
your
right.
main MMO, you go play Guild Wars 2, right? Because
Yeah.
that is exactly what you need, right?
That's
Because
what happens to me. I just think of other
in a
games and
way,
I'm like, I need a fix. What's going on
yeah,
in fucking Tyria?
yeah, and you said this earlier, right? Like Guild Wars 2, I would actually go a step further. Guild Wars 2 isn't just the anti WoW. Guild Wars 2 is the anti MMO, right?
Mm.
It is the MMO that is sufficiently different from every other MMO that you can still say, dude, I'm an MMO player, but you can play Guild Wars 2 and have a completely different experience
Mhm.
that you really won't get anywhere else. And that allows it to basically be like the parrot, the cushion. When you fall off your other MMO, you fall directly into Guild Wars 2's clutches. And it takes you, it gets you at that point, and there's no escape. You can't escape Guild Wars 2. And that meme has a lot of weight to it, right? And I believe it's also because of the combat system, right, as well, that
Mhm.
causes people to come back to the game. But it's also because it's the perfect game um, to play after you stop playing another MMO. And this
Mhm.
is why this get judged about. Like, people always meme, like, oh yeah, he'll be back, he'll be back, and of course you will, right?
Mhm.
Because there is no alternative,
Yeah,
right?
there's
Even
mhm.
though even though there's a lot of flaws, there are a lot of problems with Guild Wars 2. I don't think well, actually, a few people on the subreddit would deny that, but there are a lot of problems with Guild Wars 2. But people come back because what else are you going to play, right? And the answer is nothing. Like you don't have any other game to play. It's Guild Wars 2 or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are addicted to online games. They're addicted to MMOs. Got to play something, so it's going to be Guild Wars 2.
Mhm. Mhm. And then you complain on the Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. Then you make an angry Reddit post about how you're rage quitting the game.
I guess that's a seems like it could be a problem to me though. If you let's just say Arena are brilliant and that they're consciously designing a game that is kind of like a backstop for the MMO industry, right? A catch-all for the players can't who can't jive with current MMOs but still want to play a massively online RPG game like this. Um, you do that, you provide this experience, and what we have now is there's man, it always kills me whenever I see the community eating itself up on the subreddit or elsewhere, but mainly on Reddit. I remember back when I think it was in 2016 after all the raid releases happened, how pissed everyone in the community were not at ArenaNet, but at Raiders because they were getting content. And on either side of Heart of Thorns, there was a 9-month content drought for anyone who didn't raid. Why do you think these kinds of community interactions happen? Is it a result of the way the game is, or is it just a gaming community thing?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've got my fair share of gripes with the Guild Wars 2 community, but it's definitely not fair to really say it's like a Guild Wars 2 thing. This
Mhm.
happens in every community. What doesn't happen? Well, and to be fair, actually, no, I'm actually going to go even further than this. Like, I was going to say something like, yeah, ArenaNet responds to it and handles it appallingly, but no, actually, every big company is really awful at doing this. Actually,
Yeah.
um, I don't know how. I honestly, I wonder how some of these companies got where they are. Okay, it's kind of a failing upwards kind of thing. A lot of the time is how it certainly seems. But I can't remember who said this, but well, Nike told me about this. He said that someone said this. It's like apparently someone famous said it, so it must be true, right?
Mm.
But what happens is might have been Steve Jobs actually, might have been Jobs. What you have is you have a lot of very very passionate people who make a product, right? And then eventually all those people end up getting replaced by people who want money and men in suits, right? And then
Oh, yeah.
all the passion's gone, all the energy's gone, and then you end up with Blizzard. Okay.
Yeah.
With
Well,
the way it is right now.
yeah, the people who are passionate about the product get replaced by people who are passionate about the business. That happens with anything that's successful, I think, and
Yeah,
so the
it becomes
creative's gotta
corporate
move
and
on.
becomes bad. But I apologize. I kind of sidetracked there. Why does this happen? Like, why does this happen? It
I
happens
like
because
sidetracks, by the way, so that's fine.
one online communities are vicious and they want their thing, right? Okay, so that's just the way it goes. But there is another element to it, and the element is that with a slow release schedule, and honestly, a lot of the time it always feels like ArenaNet is kind of teetering on the brink of oblivion, right? It is very much a it feels like every game mode for itself, right? You know what I mean? It feels like a very much a zero sum game. You know, it's like
Yeah.
okay, if that raid comes out, that means I don't get something, right?
Mhm.
If I'm say I'm a PvP player, um, and a raid gets released, that's like, wait, hang on a minute, right? That's raids. I don't like raids. I'm never going to play raids.
Mhm.
Those raiders, man, they're ruining my game. I'm not getting any content, and in a way, that statement is true. No, actually, not in a way. That statement is true. Of course, it's a zero sum game. There are only so many hours in the day. They only have so many programmers. They only have so many artists, so many developers. Right now, obviously, it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? Because they've got different teams working on different stuff. But
And
still,
you
the,
can
the
always get
general
more
principle
teams.
holds, right? Yeah, but the principle holds, right? They only have so many hands to assign to projects, right, and do stuff. And this is why people are very, very aggressive with each other as well. And
Mhm.
I think with Guild Wars 2, there is the added element that you have something very, very interesting, which isn't just casual players, you have very toxic casual players, right? You have a lot
Mm.
of very entitled players. And this is cultured from the game itself. Like the game does not require you to really put in any effort to get any of the rewards.
Mhm.
Okay, that is to say, even if you are literally the worst player ever and you only auto attack, you'll get all the legendaries. Pretty much no problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
not exactly the hardest thing in the universe. So when something like a raid comes along or a challenge mode and you can't get that reward anymore, you're upset, you're mad, you're entitled, right? Because you don't want to get good. You don't want to have
Yeah.
to know what your ability. You don't want to read tooltips. What's reading? I don't. You did all that at school. What the hell is that? I don't want to do reading anymore, right?
Mhm.
Um,
I have my
and
9
so you
jobs and
get
my 15 children to worry
exactly.
about.
You get mad. I don't want to have to interact with another human being in my massively multiplayer online game. I don't want to do that. And it's the same thing with PvP, of course, right? I don't want to have to fight other players. This is ridiculous. They should put this in open world PvE as well. And obviously, this is insane, right? Like these people are idiots. They want to devalue and remove any kind of value with any reward or anything within the game, and just kind of put it into a giant mush where it doesn't matter what you've done, everything is irrelevant and nothing matters, which would
Mhm.
just be a terrible game. But that's what people want. What not very vocal minority want. And the trouble is that I've witnessed this behavior, and I'm actually a really good example for this. Sometimes on the subreddit, people will agree with my opinions and upvote me a lot. Other times, I'll say basically the same thing or exactly the same thing, and I'll get massively downvoted, and there'll be people, roasting me in the comments section. Why does this happen? It happens because social media is a disease, and social media is a hive mind. And they'll follow basically the sheep will follow the crowd, and the momentum goes in one way or another. And this is why the Guild Wars 2 subreddit and subreddits in general are very susceptible to incredibly hyperbolic mood swings. Because if you can get like a downvote train going or an upvote train going, everyone's just going to agree with you because that's the zeitgeist, right? Like that's the feeling, that's the mood
Mhm.
on the subreddit, and people are going to hive mind together, and they're going to either roast you, they're going to disagree with you, agree with you, basically completely arbitrarily, and not really think too much about it, right?
Mhm.
They're going to just say, "Oh wow, yeah, that sounds good. Let me upvote that," or "Oh, I don't like that. I'm going to downvote that." Look, all these other people are downvoting or upvoting, right? And yeah, you just end up with these big momentums. But that's not unique to Guild Wars 2. Like the exact same thing happens in basically um every online gaming sphere, right? That exists. That's just
Mhm.
how people are, right? Like
Mhm.
when people are online, they I don't know. You know how script get more intelligent the more of them there are? Humans are the opposite. The
Maybe
more
script were
people there are,
aspirational.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. You want to be like chat, aspire to be a script, okay? Don't
Yes.
be like humans on social media. Humans on social media, the more of us there are, the dumber we get. That's actually true. Well, I mean, that's well, you could probably find some science on that. Seriously, guys, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? Like
Well,
it's ridiculous. It really is.
it goes back to our tribal programming, right? Like humans didn't evolve to be part of this global village we call the internet.
Mm,
I was chatting with Rel a couple weeks ago, the lead game designer on PlanetSide 2, and we talked about how essentially no one really knows how to make a live services game. No one really knows how to do it well. Um, I think there's some examples of people who are having a lot of success. Like I look at the riots.
mhm.
Sorry, the company Riot, not riots in the real world. Um, but of course, that's also a company that makes competitive PvP games where toxicity is an enormous issue that they've dealt with at many different scales. Um, Even though I don't necessarily think though that Guild Wars is I would say uniquely responsible for this kind of an manifestation, I still feel like there are things that can happen to mitigate it. I've pretty much any game that I pick up, I always throw myself into the Reddit community, and even though there's, to your point, always animosity, I still feel like Guild Wars is particularly divisive.
Yeah,
And the sense
and
that I
that's where
get is that it has a lot to do with everyone just feeling starved for
yeah,
what they
and that's
want.
where the state of the game comes into it. The state of the game is why people are so rabid about this, right? Because they feel that if they allow a positive opinion or a reasonable take about an aspect of the game they have no interest in, then ArenaNet will see it and they'll do it. And then my game will become worse and I won't be able to play that. I won't be
Right.
able to do that. So yeah, like because of that, yes, people are very, very aggressive about it. I will say this does happen in other games too, but yeah, it happens in Guild Wars 2 more. And look, I'm just gonna say this, right? Like and I will state both sides of this equation because there
Mhm.
absolutely are. Like you can be a very toxic, like hardcore player. Absolutely. Guild
Mhm.
Wars 2 doesn't actually have that many of those. What it
It's
does
true.
have
It's
is
reversed.
yeah, it's the exact inverse. Guild Wars 2 is the opposite of the elitist MMO. It is the aggressively casual MMO, right? That is to say that if you suggest anything outside of casual content, you will basically get like attacked, right? Okay, by rabid casuals who will come at you. And look, you can experience the game how you want to do. Like I would consider myself a relatively casual player. I just play my video game, man. I'm just like messing around in PvP or whatever. I don't. I'm not like mega sweaty about the
Uh-huh.
game. I'm not like, okay, right, let's get the team together, let's get the boys. I'm just doing some raids, right? I'm doing my best as an individual, but am I really try harding like as a team, like to get raids together or to get PvP team? No, I'm just messing around and having fun with the boys, right?
Mhm.
Is what I'm doing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and doing my best on an individual level to play the game as well as I can. So you can experience the game how you want to experience the game. I've got no problem with casual players. I think
Mhm.
casual players are great. Casual players are the bedrock of
You
any
need
game,
them.
from
Mhm.
all the way from old school RuneScape all the way up to Guild Wars 2, right? Like both ends of the spectrum there, right? Like you need casual players, otherwise there's nothing for the hardcore players
Mhm.
because you know true hardcore players, like less than 10%, like honestly, less than 5%
Right.
of the player base, right? Especially in modern titles, with gaming becoming more and more accessible, more and more prevalent, you get a higher proportion of casual players because this is something you were talking about earlier, right? Like
Mhm.
there were a lot of these road bumps to even getting into the game, right?
Mhm.
Okay, even getting there. Right, you have to get the right add-ons. You've got to get the right tech, right, the right hardware to even be able to interact in these
Right.
communities. And that's gone now, right? Anyone can play WoW, right? You don't need to be in these kind of special super secret servers, right, to actually get in on the action anymore. No, everyone can, right? So obviously the proportion of players, because there's a low barrier to entry now, you're going to get way more casual players. But anyway,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But the trouble is that it does become a bit of a situation when anything outside of exactly what you want is annihilated and considered absolute garbage, right? Like that is a big problem. But I mean,
Mhm.
all of it really stems back to the fact that people feel like the end times are upon us, and any deviation from the path mean that the game will like spiral off out of control, and then you'll lose the game, and then you'll hate the game. You won't
Yeah,
like it
it's a
again,
sense of
right?
outsized control, right? And that's what it seems to me like if people didn't believe they could influence the direction of Guild Wars 2 by upvoting a post on Reddit, they would have no incentive to brigade people who disagreed with them. Although I suppose it is just a natural behavior, right? It's
Yeah,
more of a
it's just
zeitgeist aggregator than anything else. Which is what you said
it's just
earlier.
the way people are, right? I'm not
Yeah,
gonna level that accusation at the Guild Wars 2 community in particular, right? Like,
yeah,
people are always gonna go for their interests. People are never gonna understand that the downvote button is not for disagreeing. The downvote button is, for when it's irrelevant to the
not relevant,
discussion, right? You
right?
know, like, and that's something that no Reddit is ever going to actually correctly. That's just the way people are. People are going to upvote their own interests, and they're going to downvote stuff they disagree with, right? I mean,
Mhm,
that's just what it is, right?
mhm.
Unlucky.
Yeah, I suppose you have to do the best you can. I think Reddit was designed for to be uh, the scale that something like Reddit works at is something that's smaller than a gaming community for a game like Guild Wars 2. Like I'm a part of some smaller subreddits where that actually works, but a major game like this probably the scale is doesn't work there. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like Teapot. I mean, we've been doing this for a little while. I want to ask you a few other kinds of questions that are on my mind. Like I still feel like even though we've kind of talked about WoW, we haven't really talked about WoW. Um, do you want to talk for a few minutes about what your kind of classic story has been like getting back into that game? Did you play vanilla back in the day?
I played vanilla, but not in any serious capacity, right? You know, like my gameplay, when I was 9 when Vanilla WoW came out, right? So
Youngster,
I didn't really have the correct faculties, I suppose, to really appreciate what the game was, right? I was mostly like killing turtles and just doing quests and like hunting kodos, right? I mean, that's basically as far as it
casual,
went. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I was I was more into RTS back then. Like I would play a lot of RTS games. The
cool.
command, I love the Command and Conquer games. Like the slightly like offbeat, like weird humor and yeah, again, like craziness that those games invoke was what I was really into at the time as a
Hmm.
kid. But yeah, MMOs like this. Oh, what is this? This is kind because I played Warcraft 3. I was like, oh yeah, that was really good. Wow, now you are Warcraft. This is crazy.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I played that game. So getting back, so what do we want to talk about with classic WoW then? Like, where are we going with that?
I don't know. I think it's a really interesting moment in the gaming industry that Blizzard would even decide to do such a thing. Um, and now it's created this kind of secondary channel for WoW players that they have to continue. It's almost like creating a new game mode for Guild Wars, right? Or at least bringing back an
Yeah,
old one.
I mean, classic WoW is a really interesting thing, and I hope the industry takes note because what it demonstrates is that players actually like interacting with each other. And it turns out that being immersed in the game world is better than AFKing in a town and pressing the join dungeon button.
Mm.
And I think it really sends a message to any developer out there who's making an MMO. Okay, it's that people do actually value the game world, they do value the social experience, right? And it turns out that you can have a game with pretty crappy mechanics, classic WoW, right? Old school RuneScape, and a huge amount of people will play that because it's an inherently rewarding experience, even if the
Hmm.
mechanics aren't very good, right? A lot of the bosses in Molten Core, they have one mechanic. Okay, they do nothing, right? They do literally nothing. And honestly, it does start to get a little bit more interesting. Like the encounter design, you could see it's very obvious actually that with AQ40 Encourage,
Yeah.
it's very obvious that Blizzard kind of like, okay, right, that they figured it out, right? That okay, right, this is how we do the raids. They obviously stepped it up a fair notch there with their encounter design there.
Uh,
But even that, like by modern standards, there's not much going on, right? Like it's not that hard, right? It's very
yeah.
very
It
easy.
was a different
But
world. Didn't have
it
YouTube guides
turns
back then.
yeah, of course. When this released, this would have been like a living hell. Okay, 100%. Everyone's playing at like 10 FPS.
Yeah.
No one's got any
I
idea
lived
what
through
all the
that hell.
stats do, right? Yeah. I'm not disrespecting like any of the old vanilla guilds, like absolutely not. Like it would have been like, but I mean, like absolutely like, merciless, right? Like at
Mhm.
the time. But
Mhm.
now it's like you can walk over it pretty easily.
Mhm.
Um, but it turns out that none of that matters, and the game is still fun because if you're playing it with your friends, right, there's a lot to optimize in the game, right? There's a lot of lore, a lot of the world to get invested. The world feels like you are connected to it,
It
right?
feels
That's the
big.
thing. It feels big, it's expansive, right? You need to rely on your allies to get stuff done. There are quests out in the open world that will require teamwork. You're going to have to work together as a guild. It is
Mhm.
a social experience,
Mhm.
right? You know, I think that is something that Classic WoW has really highlighted. And it turns out that Classic WoW is probably one of the most popular MMOs right now, if not the most
It is
popular
such a
MMO,
good game.
right? It really
It is
is.
so
And there are
well
some
designed for
things,
what it is.
yeah, yeah. There are some things that are very badly designed and you know were fixed in later expansions, but there are a lot of things that were lost along the way that were incredibly well designed, right? As
Yeah.
well, and were it was obvious that the developers really thought about a lot of this stuff and put a huge amount of love into developing the game. Like in
Mhm.
particular, I would praise the leveling experience. I think the leveling
Yes.
experience of Classic WoW is genuinely remarkable.
Are you aware of the
Um,
Iron Man, streaming community that game has now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that. I know about that, but you know, I'm more referring to the actual like the way all the maps and quests interlink with each other,
Mhm.
and the
Sure.
way the game actually manages to sell the fact that it's a sandbox game, when of course it's actually a theme park game. Right? There's nothing sandboxy about Classic WoW as such, but the developers very intelligently made it so the player has a huge amount of autonomy when leveling up and moving from zone to zone, right? Like it was very clear that that was something that they wanted you to feel like an adventurer
Yeah.
moving through the world, and they wanted the world to be dangerous as well. Okay, you know, it's classic WoW, right? You know, that level 12 scorpion that will kill you, you know, like
Mhm.
that's going to get you. And that is it's a really remarkable thing. It's a very special experience. I would highly recommend Classic WoW. And one of the things that really turns people off actually from Classic is I find it so ironic. People always go like, "Oh man, like you know, the leveling grind, it's just too long. You know, it's just it's a complete waste of time. Right? You know, I want to actually play the game. It keeps you know the game is just denying me from actually playing
Which
with
is what
this
modern
ridiculous
WoW
grind.
does,
Right?
retail.
Well, no, retail WoW is the opposite. You level up really quickly and go to the end game.
Yeah.
But the thing is, right? Is that classic WoW, like the leveling isn't getting in the way of the end game. Like the leveling is the end game, right? Like
Mhm.
you're playing the game,
Mhm.
right? And this is such an interesting thing to me, like watching how MMOs have developed and how leveling is essentially gone now, right? Like most MMOs will simply just you know force you to boost or like
Mhm.
skip all that content, it's fine. And yeah, 100%, look, I'm not going to say that classic WoW is the perfect game. I see some comments about the running. Yeah, the running is terrible, and there are some zones and some quest chains that are appallingly designed, right, and are clearly deliberately wasting your time, right? Like I'm obviously not going to defend that, right? Like there are some very very
I
bad
can
hikes
defend
in the game,
those.
right?
I have
But
a different perspective.
for what it's worth, running back and forward, okay, dude, you get a good look at your surroundings, right? And you're paying attention because you're going to be there for a while, and it's
Mhm.
not, I think that is
And
I
you're
think it
probably
is,
gonna
I'm not.
die on the way.
I think Classic WoW is a little extreme with like the running simulator. Like I think there was this quest chain in where was it? Hillsbrad Foothills, where it says, okay, I need you to go kill 20 peasants, right? Then you run back. It's like a 10-minute run, and then it says, okay, I need you to go back exactly where you were, except this time I need you to kill some knights or whatever, right? And then
Uh-huh.
you got to run back 10 minutes, right? And then it says, okay, yeah, you know where you were, exactly where you were. I need you to run back and kill a different mob. Okay, and then there was another one after that. It's like, oh yeah, now I need to kill you. Now I need you to kill some named NPCs. Now, obviously, like why didn't you just tell me to get them all in one go, you monkey, right? But yeah, there's obviously some really bad quest design, but I think Classic WoW is a genuinely remarkable game. I think there are so many things that you just do not see in modern MMO design within Classic. It is
Mm.
genuinely a remarkable game.
Mm.
It's probably I would definitely put it down. I'll be a classic WoW shill here. I'll say it's an unmissable experience. Like
I
if
think
you're an
so
MMO
too.
enthusiast, you should play classic
I think
WoW
that the
at
best
least
way
a
to
little bit.
experience WoW Classic, at least for me, was the way I did it, which is I joined a PvP server before the PvP system was introduced. You know
Yeah.
what I like about that? What I
What?
like about that choice that I made. I actually stopped just before the honor system got introduced. Is that the only incentive? So there are PvP and PvE servers in WoW. Obviously RP servers, right? But many PvP and PvE, and the difference for those who don't know is PvP servers, you don't opt into PvP. You're always attackable. PvE, you have to opt in, so you can just do your merry PvE quest grinding whenever you want. The great thing about being on a PvP server before the honor system comes in is the only incentive that the other faction has to kill you is for personal enjoyment or for controlling a quest area. There's no farming in PvP in Phase 1 Classic WoW. And that feels great. Like, it really enhances the leveling experience. You really get the feeling that different factions are in control of different parts of the world on different days. I thought that was so cool as I was leveling up. And I remember whenever when I got into the 30s and had to decide to go to Stranglethorn Vale or not, really, like, on each day, having to check in at Stranglethorn and being like, is my faction, like, do we, like, control the roads today?
Yeah,
That's
this
so
was
cool.
actually. I actually completely agree with you on this, and I like open world PvP as a concept. I think it's very exciting, and yeah, this actually really killed. This was why I never really got into PvP in WoW, was because the way the rewards were structured. Like,
Mhm.
people weren't playing PvP when the honor system came out. They weren't playing it for fun. They were playing it to maximize their honor
It's
grinding
a hell
efficiency.
grind. Holy
Right?
shit.
Yeah, it's probably one of the, again, the PvP system in Classic WoW, it's an abomination, right? I have no idea what they were thinking. It is horribly designed. The way ranking work, terrible, absolutely horrible. I mean, it kind of makes sense on paper, but when you actually put it into practice, especially with modern game philosophy, not good. Okay, because I mean, the way it works, for those who don't know, is that if you want to rank up in PvP to get like the best epic PvP gear, you essentially have to be in the top X% of players on your server, right? For your faction. And obviously this means that the more everyone else grinds, the more you have to grind as well, right? And it kind of like goes back in on itself forever and ever and ever until it's like a complete grinding tornado. Which, as you can imagine, can get very, very sweaty in the classic WoW community, and of course in the original vanilla WoW community as well. Um, but yeah, like PvP, not good. But yeah, this was actually a really, really big thing because I was originally going to play a lot of PvP, and I had some experiences with world PvP while I was leveling actually. And this was the really sad thing actually. Like, this was the most world PvP I saw was during the leveling phase. Like, you would get quite a lot actually. You'd have a fair bit of world PvP. But the trouble is that when the honor system came out, and in particular when battlegrounds came out, like, all of it disappeared because now no one wants to fight each other in the open world. Now they just want to fight each other in battlegrounds and farm as much honor as possible. And this
Mhm.
is something that, again, like we were talking about this earlier about like reward driven gameplay.
Yes.
People stopped playing for fun. People started playing for rewards, which is why I think that there is a certain level of rewards poisoning gameplay in a
You
lot
have
of
to be
these
careful
games.
about the idols that you stand up in games like these.
Yeah.
And the idols are the
And
rewards.
you have to be very careful with the way you design the rewards as well, because I was one of the things that I was really excited about Classic was getting back to down to business and doing some Alterac Valley. I'm about that
Oh,
life. I
yeah.
like
I loved AV.
aviation. But here's the
What'd you like
thing,
about it?
right? I just like the fact that it was like this giant battle. It could go on for like an hour.
Yeah.
But then I load into AV and I'm like, oh boy, I'm so ready. I'm gonna summon the giant
Yep.
elemental guy. We're gonna
Yep.
be having a great time, right? Okay. And then I watched my entire enemy Zerg run past the enemy Zerg and just basically bum rush the Lord, and the game ended in like 10 minutes. I was like, guys,
It ain't
what?
right.
Eh?
It ain't
I don't
right,
understand
man.
it. Like,
It shouldn't
because
be
it
allowed.
turns out that the most efficient way to grind honor, win or lose, is just to ignore the enemy team, right? And again, that's obviously a design issue with the map, right? Like, Blizzard, didn't expect the players to do that,
The
right?
funny thing is that
And
didn't happen
created
back in the day. It did not happen back in the day.
yeah.
Why is that
But
different?
well, it's different because people want to grind the honor, right? They wanted to grind out the
We
rep. They
wanted
wanted
it
to grind
then
out.
too. There were high warlords and grand marshals in 2005.
Yeah. But, I mean, people weren't as. I mean, the culture was different. Like, the min
This
max
is
culture
the
wasn't
gaming
there
boomer
back.
in me coming out. Sorry. Like, I
Yeah,
just
dude, I'm a boomer too, man. I was like, I actually tweeted this out. Like, I actually vocalized this in team chat, right? In AV, and I said, guys, let's summon the ice elemental,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then they started roasting me. They started calling me a boomer. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know, man. It's like,
Yes. Uh,
yeah, yeah. They started making fun of me for wanting to fight the enemy faction. I was like, guys, let's fight the enemy faction, all right? And they just like started roasting me. I was like, dude, this is fucked up. I mean,
That's
this is not
amazing.
okay.
Next thing you're gonna
Yeah.
say, you level up without a GPS add-on, you know?
Oh, yeah. I did. I went for the purity edition, dude. Yeah, I didn't look at any. I didn't go on Wowhead, right? I didn't
All the
look
way
for the
to
quest. I had
60?
no all the way to 60. I had no
I made it
quest
to, like,
add
level
on.
40 before I
Yep.
broke down and
Oh
and
dear.
and got an assist.
Looks like you're a casual, but no, no, I just went hardcore, man, because um
How
I
did
wanted the experience of having to read what the NPCs were saying, right, and read the
did
quest
you read
text. I
are
think
you a
that's
quest
something to
text
be said
reader,
for it.
Teapot?
I am a quest text reader.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
100%. Yeah. Like when it's
You
relevant,
are a
yeah. And the
boomer.
thing is, in classic, it is relevant. They'll tell you to go northwest, and it's like a complete lie. Like it's not even close to
Yeah.
northwest, right? But that's all part of the classic WoW experience. You know what I mean, right? They'll
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, it's very nearby, just nearby to the northwest, and it's like a 20-minute walk. It's like, oh yeah, wow, thanks, quest text. That's real great there. But you know what I mean, right? It's yeah, it's there's something to be said for that, I think, and classic WoW. One of the reasons why I'm completely happy playing Guild Wars 2 and Classic WoW is because they offer the experience they offer you is just completely different.
Mhm.
Like they are almost like polar opposites,
Mhm.
I think, and that's why I like them both so much because I play them for basically opposite reasons in a way, right? Like when I want to do raiding and PvP, right, and just kind of just get into the action and play, and Guild Wars 2 is perfect. When I want to, when I want to kind of get down and immerse myself in an online world, take the portal to Azeroth, and you load up Classic WoW, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain level of connection with the game world and with the game universe that, to be honest, and I really feel bad saying this about Guild Wars 2 because I really like the devs on Guild Wars 2 and I want them to do well and I want to praise their game and I want them to be happy and I want them to watch my stream and go, wow, we made Teapot happy. Feels good, man, right? Like, he's praising our game. Incredible. But I've never really felt that level of connection with Tyria in the same way that I have with, say, the Warcraft universe, to be honest, right? I
Mhm.
think I did in Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 1, there's a certain magic about it. There's a certain mystique about the way Guild Wars 1 presented itself. It did feel quite dangerous, right? Going into a mission, oh, we might die. Oh, no, we're going to have to start again, right? And
Guild Wars 1 was a
I think a
great
big
fucking
part,
game.
it absolutely is. And I think, once again, a lot of this actually comes down to the way if the world is dangerous or not, like, or how,
Yeah.
um, or like the level of risk that you have to engage in to play the video game, right?
Mhm.
I think a big problem that a lot of games have is that there's no consequence to your action. There's no consequence. There is no fail state in a lot of these games. Like if you
Mhm.
die in classic, you're walking back for 15 minutes, right? You don't want to die.
And
If
maybe
you die
getting
in Guild
corpse
Wars
camped.
2, like you waypoint, right? And you're back in there in like 2 seconds, right? And in
Yeah.
Guild Wars 1, if you die, and suppose you're new to the game. Obviously, like when you get really good at Guild Wars 1, like there's no real threat to you, right? If you know the right hero builds like the big cheese, right, or whatever, it's no problem.
Yeah, that's
But
just a matter of
if you're dying Underworld, right, and you're like going on like an epic 2 or 3 hour dungeon crawl, and you trigger Doom, right, for whatever reason, right, and you're like, okay, right, it's time to take down Doom and finish this dungeon. If you die, you got to restart all over again. There is no recovery from that. Like you don't get to respawn and have another go at Doom. You're dead, and it kicks you out of the instance, and you have to
Mhm.
pay to get back in sometimes to try Doom again, and you have to clear out every single quest once again. Like
Mhm.
that raises the tension a little bit. You know what I mean. You're going to be sweating when you're doing that, and it's kind of the same thing with a lot of the old school MMOs is that they will punish you if you fail. Right,
Mhm.
if you fail, there are consequences to your action. There is a risk. There is a risk, and there is a reward. Right, and this is something that a lot of modern MMOs shy away from because I'll tell you what, like if the risk is too great, then it turns out quite a lot of people kind of rage quit, like when it happens
Mhm.
to them. You know what I mean? Like, and that's obviously not ideal
But if
for
there's no risk, there's
making
no
money.
reward, right?
It's not. It's an unfortunate thing,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
that is the nature of the beast, I suppose.
I really like the comparison you make about how Guild
Mm.
Wars and and WoW kind of complement each other. At least classic WoW. Modern
Yeah.
retail WoW, I can't comment on intelligently. Um, yeah, man, I wish I had the time in the day for both. I really wish I did. WoW Classic is such a cool thing. I'm really glad you agreed with my point about the honor grind, though, because that's one of the. If there's one thing I would change about Classic, hashtag no changes. I think it would be to have the pre-nerf raid encounters, um, and it would be to get rid of the honor grind, and I guess those are really the two things. Because I think WoW Classic is based on a version of WoW Vanilla that was after a lot of changes were made to those encounters to make them easier. I think.
But the encounters are relatively intact. It's more that they refine the talent trees to be a little bit more sensical and refine the itemization on a lot of the items.
Right.
To be honest, I don't think it would really make a difference because, look, all this stuff would get steamrolled anyway, right? And that's not a slight at Classic. It's just
It's a product of its
it
time.
it's a 15-year-old game, right? Like,
Yeah.
and people have been playing on private servers for years, right? There are
Right.
players who know this inside out. They could do it blindfolded, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. And a lot of the content in Classic WoW, it's designed around the fact that you're playing at 10 FPS on a PC in sizzling 480p. You know what I mean? Like you don't have your
Yeah.
amazing 1080p, 144 hertz refresh rate monitors. You're playing on a dial-up connection with 300 ping. You're on Ventrilo with like a 5-second delay. Like your raid leader, you can barely hear him because his microphone's so bad, right? Like,
Dude,
that's what the
raid
content
leaders
was designed around.
in
Right?
vanilla were weird. Were weird people. I feel like a lot of people who lead raids now, like I don't know, it's a different ball game. Like there's a lot more visibility and accountability in games today because of streaming and all the other things we have. Back in the day, though, get some fucking characters.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a few of those around, of course, but yeah, it's a little bit difficult to get away with being a complete degenerate these days. I mean,
Yeah, maybe that's why I don't play.
nice.
No, Classic is a fantastic game. I love talking about it. Um, I just wish I had more time to play it.
Yeah, it is definitely a time investment to
Yep.
engage in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, we talked a little bit about Guild Wars 3, WoW Classic. Have we talked much about the Cantha expansion that got teased?
I mean,
Do you want to?
yeah, we can talk about that. The thing is, there's really not much to say. Like
Yeah.
we've seen a picture, and that's it.
Yeah.
The main speculation is when is it coming out, and I mean, I'm kind of guessing, 9 months time from now is when
That
I
seems
expect to see it
optimistic to
get
me.
released. Oh, I hope not. I mean, if not, ArenaNet's in deep trouble. I mean, like they need to release this pretty quickly after the Icebrood saga is over. And the Icebrood saga's got 2 episodes left, maybe. Maybe they're going to do another 4, but
Mhm.
I doubt it. I think they'll probably do 2, maybe 3 or something like that, like an extra bonus one. And then I think they want to lead directly into it. Like personally, I think they've actually been working on the expansion for a while. I don't think this is like a new thing. I think they were
Yeah.
probably working on it even when they were, kind of working on they probably started working on it much earlier than we would even expect, right? Like
Mhm.
this is a company, they've done this before.
I would guess immediately
Um,
after the layoffs, probably.
I would even say earlier than that. I think they were working on it before the layoffs.
Mm.
To be honest, before that, I think that it was probably one of the things they were kind of keeping there just in case something went really, really badly wrong. And in any case, they probably wanted to at least have something on the ground, like something for groundwork for the
Sure.
new expansion
Sure.
for Guild Wars 2. But yeah, they obviously certainly started going full steam ahead on it after the layoffs, right? When
Mhm.
NCSoft said, right, you do expansion, make now, give me money, right? Um,
Pump up that gem store, baby. Give people a reason to
give me
log
that
in.
gem store money. Oh
It's gonna
yeah.
happen to me. Like, I'm gonna finish the story content, and I'm probably gonna buy shit on the gem store, and I haven't done that in over a year. Just need an excuse. So
Yeah.
what
Give me that
can
gem store.
oh man, you know what else I'm really thirsty for that I hope the expansion can deliver? We need some new elite specs, dude.
Yeah, I think I mean that with the Guild Wars 2, that's always the main selling point, right? Is adding elite specializations. That's the way it seems to me anyway, because they don't typically add like a really big content dump. They'll essentially release a lot of story content.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Um, but they won't release like 5 dungeons, right? If you look at a WoW expansion on
Mhm.
release, there'll be another like 6 dungeons or whatever, like how many there'll be. There'll be a load of extra dungeons they release
Mhm.
immediately. There'll be a new PvP map that they'll release. That doesn't happen with Guild Wars 2. Like Guild Wars 2 will release story, and then they'll
Mhm.
release a new mechanic of some kind, like mounts, gliding. I'm guessing player housing or something like this time around
That
for
seems
the
like a really
expansion,
tough one. I thought
and then
thought
they'll
that
release elite specializations.
right. Yeah, so we got Gliding with Heart of Thorns in 2015. We got Mounts with Path of Fire in 2017. It's now been almost 3 years since we had a new elite spec or major mechanic like that. It'll probably be 4 by the time the Cantha expansion comes out. Yeah, I think that the need for elite specs is really, really quite desperate. It's one of the only things that, for me, offers really great replayability of the game's content.
Yeah, it's one of the really good things is that when it gets released, it essentially says, okay, right, you now have a completely new way to experience all the content that already exists. And it perfectly complements the way Guild Wars 2 works, right? Like with everything staying relevant, like all
Hmm.
fractals, all raids staying relevant.
Hmm.
It means that you can now go, oh yeah, great. We've got great news for you, right? You know that raid that you did 5 years ago? Well, now you can do like a different funky, crazy build on it, right? And that's
Right.
good. That's really good. And PvP is going to be completely radically changed. Like the metagame will be very, very different because of that, right? That
Yeah,
will be
balances
another very, very
content for
different
those players.
experience, right? Yeah, it's really, really good. Like that kind of stuff is content, as you say, for world versus world and PvP. So yeah, I think elite specializations are definitely going to be the highlight, one way or another, of the expansion.
Hmm.
But I really hope they do change their approach. I really want to see them also really focus on repeatable content. And in particular, I think I understand that they might not want to do a lot of instance content, but I think there's this really big misunderstanding that open world content can't be engaging, right?
Hmm.
I think a lot of people think that open world content has to be completely brain dead, right?
Hmm.
I do not think this is the case. And this is a rather really, really interesting thing, actually, that I want to kind of bring WoW Classic in here because this is a great example, in my opinion. The WoW Classic raids are very, very easy, okay? Even by Guild Wars 2 standards.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? Now, this is a very important distinction here. It is very easy to die to a WoW Classic raid. Very easy to
Hmm.
die to a WoW Classic raid because they will punish you if you don't do it right and if you don't work as a team. If your healers aren't healing the tank, well, good luck. You're dead at that point, and everyone who's playing with you is dead too. And there's a really good example of this in Guild Wars 2 as well. Triple Trouble Worm. The
Hmm.
mechanics are very easy. You
Hmm.
pick up a bomb and you bomb the worm. You get eaten by the worm, right? Then you bomb the worm, right? You run around in circles and fill it, and pick up a cloud, and then you kill the worm, right? This is not difficult, but what it does require is it requires coordination and it
Hmm.
requires teamwork, right? Because if you don't work as a team, and you don't kill all the worms at the same time and you don't communicate we're going to do it, we can burn, we can burn, we can go, you will die, you will lose, right? And you won't kill all the worms, you won't get to the second phase, and you won't get your extra rewards. Very easy on an individual mechanical level, but legitimately challenging when it comes down to actual team play and coordination. And
Hmm.
this is something I've actually
It's
really come to
community building.
appreciate. Yeah, this is something I've come to appreciate about classic WoW and 40-man raiding is that you can have a very easy raid be engaging, right? You can have a very easy encounter still be engaging, right? And this is what I'm really after, right? I don't need everything to be like, oh my god, you need 500 APM to play this, right?
Hmm.
You've got to be mashing that keyboard to even have a chance to take down this boss. I don't get me wrong. I like that, right? I like to be really pushed on a mechanical skill, I think that's fun, right? But I understand that that's not for everyone, and
Hmm.
you can't have that necessarily in an open world. But what I'm really looking forward in my game is for it to be engaging, for me to feel like what I'm doing actually does something, is what I'm really looking for in my video gaming
Agency.
experience. Agency, exactly. And that is where I feel like almost every piece of content ArenaNet puts out fails. I feel like it just doesn't matter if I try or not, because I know I'm going to get there in the end. Right. But with Triple Trouble, dude, adrenaline is pumping. Okay, you know what I mean? And we got to get on voice and start yelling at people, right, to make sure we kill these worms at the same time.
Hmm.
This very old, very easy event, right? Every criticism, every mockery of the difficulty that I would jab the classic WoW people with is the exact same thing that could be levied at Triple Triple Worm. It's very easy,
Hmm.
right? The thing is, it requires you to actually pay attention. There is a very clearly defined fail state, and if you don't execute, you lose,
Hmm.
right? And you have to try again. And
And
that
it's harsh
is what
punishment because you
makes
can't do it for another. It's not every
yeah,
2 hours, right? It's not a longer cycle, isn't it?
and that's what makes content engaging, right?
Yeah.
It's the possibility of failure, the requisite of having to actually pay attention and work as a team. Like that is what makes content engaging, and that
Hmm.
is why these games like Classic WoW, they can get intense, right? When you're doing these raids, it can get intense, right? And the same is true for stuff like Triple Trouble Worm, right? You can lose very easily if you aren't
Hmm.
careful, and that's a magical thing. It really, really is. More of that, please, in my video game. And this is something I really hope we see in open world in Guild Wars
Hmm.
6, because we know we're going to get new maps, probably 4 or 5 new maps,
Yeah.
right? And I want to see them
I think it's
actually
the
be
best
good.
part of Guild Wars is the new maps.
I don't want to see Path of Fire where the maps are just a joke, right? Okay,
Yeah.
and they're pretty, right? They're nice to look at, but they don't engage you, right? They're trivial. They don't. There's no challenge there whatsoever.
And
I don't want
there's
to see that.
very little reason to go back.
No.
Way less
Yeah,
repeatable than like even look at like the Heart of Thorns maps.
yeah.
Somehow Heart of Thorns maps got designed to be very repeatable and Path of Fire didn't.
Well, yeah, and I think that's because they moved away from like these big meta events with big bosses, right? Also, they completely killed the coordination, and this is something that you see in a lot of ArenaNet boss design these days. Is that what they do is you run around an environment a little bit, and then you encounter an HP sponge. You kill the HP sponge, then you loot the chests. Like that
Hmm.
is essentially what Guild Wars 2 open world content is before. But if you look at HOT, right, almost all of the maps require you to spread out, right?
Hmm.
And split into different groups. All of these groups have slightly different mechanics and slightly different responsibilities to engage with and to play. And if any one of those fail, then everyone fails, right?
Hmm.
Which is a much healthier way to design the game, in my opinion, and for repeatability and engagement.
Hmm. And if there's a possibility of failure, there's implied an incentive to cooperate, which
Yes,
also
exactly.
gives glue for communities. And that's what
Yeah.
I perceive a lack of whenever I try to play Guild Wars myself, where the community's at. And it's
Well,
funny.
yeah,
One of
and
the only
this
communities that
they
I've
go full
actually stuck
circle.
around in is this guild called Sand, which just runs dry top every week and just tier 6 dry tops. And I don't really play with them that much, but I'll drop in every once in a while because it's just fun to hang out. Like it's literally just a fun hour of bopping around, doing events, chatting with people, talking about Star Wars or whatever's going on in the world. I love that part of MMOs. I think that the socialization component, if the way that you design your MMO doesn't result in socialization, that's kind of one of the major places where I
Something
take issue.
something's gone wrong at that point.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
whenever I
completely.
spend like an evening inside of single player story instances, I kind of get that feeling of ick. Like, okay, this is fun, but um where does it go?
Yeah, it feels very out of place, I think, in an MMO. All a lot of single player content. it doesn't seem to gel with with the game itself, with what the game is supposed to be.
Mhm.
It is a very confusing experience. You do kind of wonder, like, what is this doing here again? Like, why is this in the game?
Mhm.
And like, and again, like, this is why it's so difficult to critique Guild Wars 2, in my opinion, because it's not bad content. Quite the opposite. I enjoy playing through the story.
Mhm.
Right, I liked it. I have very little complaints. With the way the story goes, but I'm not playing Guild Wars 2 for the story. I'm playing it because I'm playing an MMORPG, and I want to play a massively persistent online world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And when you kind of take that away, and then you're left with a lot of single player content, you go like, well, I mean, that was nice, but that wasn't what I ordered, right? You go to a
Mhm.
restaurant, right? You order a pizza, right? And you really like pizza. You're like, dude, I could do with a pizza right now, man. Let's go. Give me that pizza, right? And then the waiter comes back and says, "Oh, here you are, sir," and brings you a delicious bowl of pasta. And it's kind of like, well, I mean, dude, I'll take it, right? I mean, I like pasta. I like that too. But that's not what I came for to this restaurant for.
Mhm.
I would really wanted a pizza, and they bring you some pasta. It's like, well, I mean, you can still enjoy the meal, right? I was like, well, I mean, you don't send it back for it. You don't want to cause a fuss, right? Which I mean, here in the Guild
The
Wars 2
metaphor
community,
breaks
we do.
down at some points.
We no, it's not breaking down. It still works, right? Because here in the Guild Wars 2 community, we like to we like to make a fuss, but suppose that we don't, then it's still a good time, but it's not really what you were looking for, and you're always going to feel a little bit unsatisfied by your very fine bowl of pasta, but you really wanted that delicious pizza, with all those glorious toppings on, and that's
Mhm.
kind of what it feels like when you have this single player content in an MMORPG. The name really should give it away, in my opinion, I guess. But ArenaNet haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah. No one aspires to do single player story content. And I think
Well,
aspirations are kind of an important part of MMOs.
I'm not sure that's entirely true. I think a lot of players do enjoy a single player experience. You see
I didn't say
stuff.
enjoy, I said
uh,
aspire.
Aspire. I guess. Uh, I guess not. But I'm not sure if aspiration is necessarily a part of MMORPGs. I don't
You
think
don't think so?
it necessitates um, aspiration. No, I think you can have a lot of fun without
I think
kind of
that might be more of a
aspiring to
teapot thing.
go places.
Honestly, man, I
Uh,
don't think there are a lot of people playing MMOs with the mentality you have.
I think that's probably true. I am I am a special snowflake.
You really
That
are.
that could be the case. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, it's kind of like, talking to a hardcore raider in a game like Guild Wars. It's like, yeah, you like the game your way. That's great. But that's not what most people get out of it. Um, and
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
you're
I think
also in
that's
a
fair.
unique spot because you have a really great streaming set community that really motivates you, and where the game is kind of like the platform for the stream rather than necessarily the point of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That's a fair thing to say. I'll agree with that. I think I think a lot of players. I think you're definitely right that a lot of players do kind of want to have something to go for, right? Like have a
Mhm.
direction to move in. That's certainly true.
Mhm.
But I would still hold to my statement that I don't think it's necessarily the case. Um, and maybe I'm being a little stubborn here. But I think for the sake of discussion, it's an interesting point to bring up. Actually,
Well, maybe it's more
I
about
think.
intrinsic versus extrinsic. Intrinsic
Well,
versus extrinsic aspirations, right?
I
Goal set
uh,
by the game versus goal set by yourself.
Well, maybe, but I mean, I would look at the way the gaming community, the way the MMO community has changed. Like players play MMOs for different reasons than they used to, in my opinion. And
Okay.
and what I'm trying to get at is that I don't think you necessarily need to have like this approach, this incentive to play these games. I
Mhm.
think I think it would be possible, theoretically speaking, perhaps, to have a very different approach to playing the MMO. Make it more about the experience of growth as a player and playing, because you like the game, not because you want to necessarily get anywhere in the game, right? I would liken this more to I think we talked about you mentioned kind of Riot Games and League of Legends. I would
Hmm.
liken it more to that. Like a lot of people who play League of Legends, in fact, I would go as far to say the majority of people who play League of Legends don't really care about being good at the game, right? They're not really aspiring to do anything in League, right? They're not looking to go pro or looking to get good even really. Most people that play League just play because they like they like the game and they like to mess around and meme around, right? In some and troll in League of Legends unranked queues, right?
Hmm.
And I suppose I would almost like it if MMOs kind of fell into the same behavior pattern, right? I think it will be a healthier and more sustainable and kind of less burnouty way to play games if everyone just played them because they liked them, instead of playing them to because they want to progress in some way. Like
What's the
I
difference,
accept,
though?
uh, I think that the difference is that a lot of people play MMOs exclusively to see numbers go up in one way or another, and I think a lot of people play games like League of Legends or Dota because they just like the game for
Hmm.
the gameplay itself, not seeing a number. You're not really seeing a number go up in
Hmm.
League of Legends or Dota. I mean, to be fair, they actually did kind of add some features so you can see numbers go up in those games. To be fair, so there is an element
Hmm.
of that in these games now, but I think that's not really like the main focus of the game. The main focus of the game is people, they like, dunking on some fools in League of Legends, right? For better or for worse.
Are you
I think
familiar? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no,
Oh,
good.
I was gonna say if you're familiar with Bartle types and Bartle typing.
Yeah, I am aware of the concept.
Hmm. Those who don't know, it's basically a guy who came up with a system for figuring out what players like about MUDs, old school MUDs, multi-user dungeons, basically primordial text MMOs that I think still have a lot of parallels to modern MMOs. And the conclusions that he drew is that people, what they like out of those games, you can plot players on two different axes, right? On the one side of it, do they like interacting or acting on? On the other side of it, do they like doing that with the world or with players? So, for example, someone who's a killer and traditionally likes dominating other players, likes acting on players. Someone who's an explorer and likes interacting with the world. The other two are socializers who like interacting with players, and achievers who like acting on the world. Um, do you have a sense of where you fall in that matrix, Teapot?
I mean, I think I'd be a little bit difficult to classify on something like that, I suppose. But I mean, like, I think what it really comes down to is probably like acting on the world. Really,
Achiever. Hmm.
I like the idea that my actions actually mean something within this giant online world, right? Like that one way or another. I don't particularly care if that's PvP or PvE. I mean, I would probably lean towards PvP. I think interacting with other players kind of is inherently a little bit more interesting, right? Like, and a bit more sustainable for long
Hmm.
term play.
Socializing. Hmm.
Yeah, socializing and killing other players for whatever reason, right? Like both ends of the spectrum, right? I think both work there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's probably where I would go there. But I think right now, the way a lot of MMOs are designed is perhaps a little bit more. I don't know, like it's a little bit too much in favor of just like disconnected from the actual gameplay itself, right? I think that the reason you should play games is because the game is fun, not because the game is going to reward you in some way, right? Like I always find it so sad, right? Like the developers put in all this effort in making all the game mechanics and designing all the encounters, and then the only thing people care about is they get like a shiny hat at the end of it, right? And that's what they take away from it. Like a lot of players just go, "Oh yeah, this hat's fucking great, dude." Okay, but they're not going like, oh yeah, the bot. They're not saying, oh, that boss was so good. That was such a very good boss. Like, oh yeah, dude. I really want to get that fucking legendary armor, dude. Like that's my jam. Like that's what I'm
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
That's the real draw. And then as soon as they have that reward, they never do it again. It's like, well, the fuck. That's messed up. That they didn't actually like the game that much. I guess. They only wanted to get the reward and then leave.
Sure.
So
So
that's why I'd probably consider myself as a bit of an oddball because I think a lot of people would go, well, duh,
I
why would I
think you
do
are
something I'm
fairly
not going to get
unique.
rewarded for?
You're fairly
Like
unique in that you play a reward driven what most people is a reward driven game. But for you, you're you find the act of just playing the game and interacting with the mechanics sufficiently motivating, and that combined with the streaming factor, I'm sure. And you did say earlier, I think, that if you weren't a streamer, you might not even do much gaming at all, which
that is
also I think
correct.
makes
Yes.
you a bit unique. I had an experience with another game that feels great to play, is objectively polished, feels amazing, has great feedback. There's tons of world building, lots of places to go, but couldn't keep me because the channels that I had to focus my energy were not rewarding. That's Destiny 2. Um, so I think, and I've talked to other people who felt the same way about that game. Um, the sense that I have, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, everyone comes to gaming for different reasons, of course. MMOs tend to attract, I think, a certain type, perhaps. But I think different games do better and worse jobs of giving good hooks for community building. Um, Guild Wars is a game that should have had a lot of them, and uh, I think the only place where community building seems to be happening right now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you would know this better than I would, seems to be streamers.
A lot of
I guess World of the
that
World
that
is still chugging along, right?
it's a yes no. That there are definitely some communities in the game. Like I'm not going to pretend like the game is dead, right? And there are no
I'm
communities.
not saying it's
That's not. Yeah, no. I'm obviously being hyperbolic here, right? But no. Like there are still some communities, but yeah, there's nothing like it's not like the old days, right? The really big open world guilds, right? The really big world versus world.
right,
It
like the
is quiet
TTS and
on the on the community front. Yes, things are. Most players are playing solo, right? And are playing on their own, for sure. That's definitely true.
I guess the thing that really I needle at is that I feel like I'm a player who plays solo but doesn't want to. But the thing is, anytime I make an attempt to play in a different way, I feel like I can't find other people who want to play that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is a frustration that I was ranting about this today actually. Like I and again, this really comes into the whole like classic WoW thing that we were talking about earlier with like the mentality stuff that's there. It is very difficult to convince people to actually try in Guild Wars 2.
Hmm.
Um, and it's often, and I was trying to keep it relatively positive because I was aware I was being quite negative on my stream today, actually, and
Mm.
I don't like to do that. And I could
I
kind of feel
noticed
it
that.
spiraling out of control. So I kind of held my tongue a bit, but I'll say it now because I've got a clearer head. So I can say it's not coming across like a like a complete like doomer here. But like one of the really big frustrations that I have, a lot of the time I just felt there's no point right in trying to actually do this. Like it feels like it's too late. It feels like the ship has already sailed with trying to organize stuff in the Guild Wars 2 community because it doesn't really matter how hard you try or how much effort you put in, right? You'll always be the only one driving the train. And if you
Mm.
ever stop, the wheels are just going to fall off and then everything just goes to shit, right? And my belief there is not entirely unwarranted. This exactly happened with pretty much every community I've been involved in. And I understand this is probably because of me streamer, right? Me streamer. So everyone me want to play with streaming, right? Like that's how
Yeah.
it goes. And
Yeah.
and I understand that. So
Cost
I
of doing
in a way
business.
in a way I have a handicap when it comes to starting communities because people are only going to want to play with me, right?
Well, and
But
an
it's
advantage.
still it's an advantage and a curse though because it means that it's very difficult to get people playing for the right reasons, and
Mm.
this actually really screws me over because a lot of the World versus World is a really good example of this because a lot of the time when I play World versus World and I get my viewers and they want to play World versus World, right? They don't care about world versus world whatsoever. They just want
Mm.
to come play with me with whatever I'm doing, and that's fair enough. But the problem is that this causes them to behave in ways that are contrary to the way I enjoy the game. Because they don't care about world versus world. They don't get the right build. They're not really paying attention to the calls. They're not trying to be good at world versus world. And this leads world versus world to be a very frustrating experience to me a lot of the time because I care about winning. I like winning, right? I like
Mhm.
doing well. I want my guild to be good at world versus world.
Mhm.
But world versus world is probably like the game mode that most people just really don't give two shits about. And that really shows when I try and organize it. Like, I did get there in the end with my a long time ago in Heart of Thorns. We actually became a very, very powerful guild, one of the strongest like open field servers, one through sheer numbers, and also because of everyone just had like these really cheesy builds on, which I mean, that's how it works, man.
Name of
You
the
got to do what
game.
you got to do to win, right? That's how the game works, right? But yeah, we would do our thing, and we were very, very effective. But the grind it took to get that was like ungodly. It really was.
Mm.
And the same is true with almost everything in Guild Wars 2. It is very difficult to get people to actually care about, say, doing better DPS in raids. Because I'd like to, do well in raids and be able to really one-shot these hard mode raids and do them effectively with high DPS, everyone really popping off, right? But the thing is, people don't care about that, and they don't really want to. And if I really wanted them to do this, and this is something that I'm completely aware of, like a lot of people think I don't know this, and I'm like blissfully ignorant, but I am aware that if I really want people to do this, I'm gonna have to handhold them and babysit them the entire way. And to be honest, I kind of dig my own grave here because that is not something I have any interest in doing. Like I don't like doing that. Like that isn't fun to me, right? I'm a for fun gamer, and that isn't fun. I do not want to babysit people like all day, all night to, do stuff that they should want to do on their own. And it's even worse because even if you force people to do this, they're doing it for the wrong reason. They're doing it because you're like forcing them to, not because they want to,
Mhm.
right? And this was a really big point of friction with because I just got back from and this is one of the reasons why I kind of got a bit pissed off was because I just came back from playing a WoW Classic. We did Encourage AQ40
Right.
progression,
How far would you
right?
get, by the way?
Uh, full clip, full clear, day one, dude.
Damn. Very
Easy.
nice.
Farming those purples, man.
Very nice.
But regardless of that, like the difference in attitude was shocking to say the least. Like
Mm.
in that game, everyone was like grinding like a motherfucker to get all the consumables, right? They were going crazy, making sure they had everything prepared. They were looking at the mechanics, right? Blah, 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 right? Everyone was actually putting in effort. Like everyone was collecting up the stupid world buffs to maximize their effectiveness. And it's like, God damn, dude. Right. Like these motherfuckers, I didn't even have to crack the whip on them. They just did it. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, that's just what people do in this game.
So the
It's like,
game
man,
tells you to do it, trains you to do it as you level up.
that's debatable. That is debatable.
It's the mentality, though, don't you think?
It's the mentality, but I don't think the game itself actually provides that. I think it
Is
is
it the
actually
community
more
then?
of I think it's the community. Yeah, I think the community is very different, and it's not. I think it's more that Guild Wars 2 anti motivates you in that direction rather than WoW Classic motivating you in that direction. There are some very, very casual guilds in Classic WoW, right, as you would
Sure.
expect, right,
Yeah.
in every game. But it's
It's
more
actually not
like
that
in
hard to
Guild.
beat the raids in Classic WoW,
No, it's
to your
no, they're
point.
very easy. Like the raids are not
You don't even
difficult.
have to get world buffs, all the farming. People like to do it because it's fun to lean in, but you don't have to. Never
Yeah,
did that
yeah,
shit
but
back in
but
vanilla
but
days.
that's exactly my point, right? Like, people do it because they want to, and a
Mhm.
lot of the time when I'm organizing stuff in the community for Guild Wars 2, I feel like I'm forcing people to do it,
Mhm.
And I think that is very bad. I don't think you should ever really be forcing people to do stuff
Mm.
in the game. I think that's a very unhealthy and unsustainable way because all it ends up with is me or the other community leaders getting burnt out, right? Like
Yeah.
absolutely
Well, it's too
incinerated.
big of a
Uh,
job.
yeah, which is a really big problem. Like these communities, they need to be self-sustaining, right? They
Mm.
need to generate the hype and generate the energy from themselves, and that is a really, really tough problem to accomplish in Guild Wars 2. And I don't think. Well, I mean, I am trying again right now to see if I can get that going, but it is no easy job. It is no easy task, and it's going to be a
Mm.
real struggle to see if I can make it happen.
Mhm. Do you have, like, streaming aspirations where Guild Wars 2 is concerned? You've done multiple rating tournaments. You did Masters of the Arena. I hear you say you burned out on forcing people to do stuff. Uh, where is this going for you?
So, I mean, it is actually my very strong conviction that I think Guild Wars 2 can actually be big on Twitch and can be a presence on Twitch. Like my rationale is, look, if old school RuneScape can be relevant on Twitch, then so can Guild Wars 2. I think it is actually a pretty engaging game to get engaged with and check out
It's
on
great for
stream. It's
jumping in and playing with streamers. It's so easy
yeah,
unless
it's
you're in
just
more
that
versus world.
it doesn't get a lot of attention, and, I think a lot of people don't take the game seriously enough for that to really happen, right? Like,
Hmm.
your average casual player isn't watching Twitch, right? Your average casual player isn't even looking at online guides. That's just not the way people interact with streams, right? Like,
Hmm.
watching a stream is an inherently more engaged thing, and the Guild Wars 2 community is not engaged with the media, right? With streaming, with
So
YouTube,
just
even with
by
YouTube.
talking here, we're kind of preaching to the choir a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely preaching to the choir here. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, though. It's just someone might stumble upon it anyway, right? That will be
Yeah. Well, we'll be on
converted.
YouTube
Yes,
later. That's a little more accessible than Twitch, right?
exactly, right. And then they'll get suckered in that way, I suppose.
And it'll be on
But
Reddit, and then they'll be
yeah. Oh,
screwed.
oh yeah. Then they're doomed. Yeah. Then that's when the real trouble comes through, I guess. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. Like when it comes to aspirations, and well, I mean, there was I mismanaged Master of the Arena pretty badly, and this is something I've
How's that?
talked about on stream very very publicly. I ended up doing an insane amount of work and making myself incredibly miserable.
Mm.
Over the amount of time there, I just basically ran out of time to finish everything I wanted to do, and so I lost the luxury of doing it at my own pace and was just end up forced to do it at like a horrible soul crushing grind. Which wasn't that much fun. I didn't it wasn't that good, to be honest with you. And it didn't quite turn out how I wanted, but that's another story entirely, I suppose.
Mhm.
But yeah. Uh, I do want to do more events, and I really think that Guild Wars 2 PvP and raiding can really grow through the events. So
Mhm.
definitely expect to see some of that stuff. Like when it comes to raiding events, um, I would like to do more stuff, but right now I don't really see there's a lot of potential, not really a lot of scope to
Community
do that
seems really small.
in the game's current state. But if it is possible, I will do it. Like
Can
that's what I
strikes
always say.
can strikes facilitate that kind of thing?
No. Strike missions are very, casual content, right?
What
Like
about low mans? Someone
they
in the chat's asking.
low man, like low man strikes and stuff like that. I mean, or just low mans in general, like low
I
man,
think
like
they
raids and
meant
stuff.
strikes,
Or
but
what?
I guess in general, like I know there used to
Uh,
be all the way back in the day before the expansions, there was like a low
the
man dungeon
the trouble is
thing.
it's just too easy, right? I mean, like the strikes are not challenging enough. Like a good example of this is me and a guy called Lederhosen. We just two man the bone skinner, right?
I saw that.
It wasn't hard, right?
You
It
were
wasn't
called out
difficult
by a
actually.
dev, weren't you? Challenged?
Yeah. We were called out to do it with very low man or something like that, or with two players, the new version. So we did
Mhm.
it. We did the new version with two players. And not so bad. We got them good, right? Um, but yeah, we did it. We came up with our plan. We strategized, and we were the first two people to do it. I think with that the new difficulty, we got the job done.
Very
But
nice.
no, I don't think that's really. I don't think strikes are really feasible for any kind of competitive play. Really, they're just
Mhm.
DPS golems too much.
Mhm. There are 7 raid wings though,
No.
right? Like 15,
That's
20
correct.
bosses,
Yep.
something like that.
7 raid wings.
Yeah. I've done them all, but I don't remember the last 3.
In Wing 7. Actually, Wing 7 got a lot of shit because it's very easy, but one thing that it does really well, and one thing that I really appreciated for the raid tournament I did last, the Elitist Raiding Party 3, of course,
Mm.
was that it is very, very cinematic, actually. It looks great on
Yeah.
camera. The way they design the bosses, the mechanical design, it actually looks incredibly cool. So, I'll
Mhm.
give them that. Credit
It's a
credit
great
where it's due.
showcase for raids.
It is a very good showcase, a very good spectacle for raids, and it was a fun raid. Like for all its flaws, and it has many. It's a good raid.
And also
It's a
continued
good
the
encounter.
it continued the story of Zomaros, right? which is one of those
Yeah, well,
long
yeah, kind of
time
concluded the
threads that people have
Kadim
been.
arc.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, raids are. I think if raids were, if Arena signaled to me, like, or sorry, just signaled that raiding was something that they cared about and wanted to keep doing. Like, if we just saw another raid wing while strikes were coming out, that'd be one of the things that I personally am looking for, to be like, yeah, okay, Guild Wars is still a game for me. Personally, like, I don't really play MMOs for PvP. It doesn't really appeal to me. Like, I play shooters for that. I'm
Mhm.
an arena shooter guy. Um, and World versus World, I like the idea of, but I haven't been able to find someone to play with. I'm stuck on Stormbluff Isle at the moment.
Nice.
Yeah. Um, but I love organized PvE stuff, and Fractals just never did it for me. Like, 5 people isn't enough for a community to form around. I feel like 10
Yeah.
seems like an okay number. Like, it's not as good to me as like 15 or 20, but it's still good.
I think the sweet spot is 20 players. I
Mm.
think 40, for all that I do like
40
it
is a fucking
in
meme,
classic.
dude.
Okay, 40 is maybe a few too many. Like maybe you could actually, if you were going to develop, like, if Guild Wars 3 is going to be like a PvE dedicated game, I think you could maybe do like 140-man raid a year, okay? And then you can do like
What
the
about
rest
open
of it
world
is like
raids?
20
Isn't Ashes of
monster.
Creation doing something like that?
Yeah, open world. Oh, I think instead of 40-man, you just do like open world bosses, right? Like really hard open world bosses
Yeah.
is the approach you take there, because
I think
I think
that'd
if
be a
you
great fit
do
for
if you
Guild
do
Wars.
raids,
Yes.
it's a bit too much, right? It's going too far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also hiding away that stuff in an instance is a risk for a game that is so dedicated to open world stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more open world stuff that can be done, the better really. I think there's something very, very special, very magical about open world content, right? And stuff that's actually out there in the world,
Mhm.
and you can see all these players interacting with it. I think it's a
Mhm.
very special thing.
One of the things I enjoyed the most when I first started playing Guild Wars 2 and first got to the end game was doing the which was in early 2015 in the content drop before Heart of Thorns, was doing the meta event for Silver Wastes with the 3 lanes. My wife and I love that. And part of the reason I did that and ended up playing this game is because it was a game my wife could play with me with open world content. She's a lovely person. She's a casual, a filthy casual. I give her all of her
Uh-oh.
builds and I figure all of her gear for her. Um, I tell her what rotations to do, and if they don't work, then I'm to blame. But I love her, and she's moved on from the game since then, so it's kind of old news. But that's what pulled me back in as someone who I never thought I was going to play an MMO again. I quit WoW retail in 2009 during Wrath of the Lich King, right when Ulduar was released. Never thought I was going to come back to it ever again. I moved around. I started a career. I got married, and all of a sudden, Guild Wars 2 was there. Like, it kind of speaks to what you're talking about it being a comfort MMO, about it having a real niche that can be filled. Cantha,
Yeah. Cantha boys,
Jade
indeed.
C meta.
Yeah. Like, this is a weird thing actually. Like a lot of people, yeah, for my take on the expansion and stuff like that, this is gonna be a spicy one. Like a lot of people are thinking that I maybe think that Guild Wars 2 is going to kind of like have this epic revival from the expansion. I think that's quite unlikely. I think that it will definitely reinvigorate the players and get some new players in there, but it's not going to like suddenly become MMO number one, like burst onto the top
No chance.
MMO scene, right? This is not how it works, right? Like that, there's not really much chance of that. As nice as it would be, it's fairly unlikely at this point that
Hmm.
something like that would happen. It's more that it's just going to keep people tided over. It's going to be it's going to be very good for
Something to
me
look forward
personally,
to.
like something to look forward to in the game, and something for me as a player to look forward to enjoying,
Hmm.
which is obviously important as well, from my perspective anyway. But it's a really interesting thing to talk about actually, because I still do think that it would have been better for the overall game and for the company if Arena had succeeded in their other projects and didn't have to do the expansion. because I
Mhm.
think ultimately what we're going to get with the expansion is just going to be more of the same to an
Yeah.
extent. It will
Yeah.
be exactly what we already have, and the game is going to progress, but it isn't going to progress in the way that in the actual sense of progression, right? Like it
Yeah, the
will.
story will move forward. We'll learn about the deep sea dragon,
Yeah,
Steve.
but yeah, like the game isn't going to like magically transform into a completely other form. It
Mhm.
will stay as it is. Like Guild Wars 2 is what it is now, and it is very unlikely to change into anything else
Mhm.
along the line from here.
Mhm.
Like this is it, right? What Guild Wars 2 is now is what it always will be, and that's not a bad thing. It's just don't expect the game to transform with the expansion. I think a lot of people really expected a big change in direction, like a big big switch, like a big shakeup with Path of Fire, and we did get that in a way, but just not not exactly in the way
Not
we wanted,
really.
I suppose. Um,
Heart of
well, I think it
Thorns, I think, really tried to do that.
it
And,
did, and Path of Fire did just in the opposite direction.
did
That
Arena
was
get
quite.
burned by Heart of Thorns? That seems to be the narrative that I came away with.
That it's certainly a theory, right? I think a lot of people think that they really didn't like the reception to Path of Fire, to Heart
Mhm.
of Thorns rather, and they ended up kind of going, okay, right, now we're gonna have to do something a little bit different here, right?
Yeah,
And
they nerfed
what are
it,
we gonna do about
they
it?
changed the face of the company, and then they put out Living World Season 3, which speaks for itself.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the big theory is that that they saw the reaction like, oh my god, it's too hard. We need to nerf it into oblivion. Oh no, oh no, oh no, and well, there you have
Yeah,
it, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe there are people out there who would not play Guild Wars because open Hard Thorns open world is too hard. I go to the examples that I have in front of me, which is of course myself, where I wanted it to be hard. Um, like I told you earlier about my WoW vanilla experiences. I like having those totems of distinction and success. Like when I see a dude with a high warlord weapon, I know that guy did something like that. That's a meaningful piece of gear. It's a meaningful visual to see. Um, or like one of the ways that things that I really cottoned on to in WoW Vanilla that no one else really got was Bone Reaver's Edge, which is a two-handed weapon that applies a really strong debuff that I figured out for my guild back in the day that it was really strong and we needed it in every raid. Also sword spec, no one understood how strong sword spec was back in the day. This shows you how fucking of a these were the boomer days.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you could think your way out of a paper bag, you were way out at the front. Um, now I have no idea where I was going with this tangent because I get so excited about talking about that shit. Uh, but yeah, Cantha. That'd be good to hear that
Cantha
music again.
Gaming. Oh well, it will be a really fun adventure. I am really looking forward to the expansion. I
Me
have
too.
absolutely no doubt that the game will be a lot of fun to play, and it will be a very exciting time for the game at that point.
Are you gonna play Burning Crusade Classic?
Um, you know, that is an interesting question. I think it really depends. Um, if there are other options for other MMOs, then probably not. Like one of the reasons why I'm playing Classic is because I want to play some. I want to play other MMOs that are a bit different to Guild Wars 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like the slightly more old school experience that that Classic is.
Mm-hmm.
But if something else comes along that can kind of almost do the same thing, or just in a different way, I would rather play a new game than an old game, right? When you get right down to it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck playing like a 8-year-old games, 15-year-old games forever. I'd much rather
Yeah.
play some new.
What's your take on Ashes of Creation?
Ashes of Creation is probably going to be the next actual contender for an MMORPG
Mm-hmm.
uh, that could have the potential to be good. Like their design is good. I'm concerned about their combat system right now. They've gone in a very unusual direction, in my opinion. They've gone for a very tab target style system, which I think is a mistake. I think the days of the tab target MMO have gone and
Yeah.
passed. right?
When they
In
describe it, it
my
makes no
opinion.
sense to me. Like a mix of tab and skill shot. Like what's that? What's that
Well, that's
mean?
Guild Wars 2, but that's a good thing. When I heard that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, they're doing Guild Wars 2 combat then. Great." But my problem is that it seems they've kind of abandoned a lot of the action elements, like the
Mm,
more dynamic combat elements, which is a very big concern to me. But I think the game will not be released for around 2 years, so I'm actually not that worried about it at that point, right? Like the most important part at this stage is getting their initial systems going, right? Like the actual core
mhm,
mechanics
mhm,
going, and then they can refine the combat and make it not crap
mhm.
later, right? So I'm okay with it. I'll give them a pass just this once.
The game seems too big to me, man. Like they're trying to do too much.
Um, a lot of people probably felt that about World of Warcraft. Okay, is what I would say.
But I don't think that release state World of Warcraft was trying to do a lot. Like
I
it had
think for the time though, it was probably seen as absurdly ambitious to even attempt something like that.
for the time. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Although it did have EverQuest to refer to, which it had done a lot
Yeah,
of the same things in a less refined state.
yeah. And I think that was the big step up that Classic made, right? It was just, really
In
refining
fact,
all of the other features there.
back in those days, people saw WoW as a casual version of EverQuest.
Yeah.
It was like a candy
I think that
coated
actually
version
holds
of
up.
it.
It's kind of weird. Like a lot. This I actually got really trolled by this. To slightly digress, I got really trolled. Like everyone. One of the reasons I wanted to go play Classic because I thought it was going to be a very hardcore experience. Like, oh yeah,
Oh
this is going
no.
to be a super hardcore game. And I got baited, right? Because well, I trust people, right? Like I had no reason to doubt. Like why would they like randomly bullshit me? Like I had no reason to think otherwise, right? But then I play the game, like, oh yeah, this is a casual game actually. Like I think that even by today's standards, WoW Classic is actually a very very casual friendly game,
It
which is
is.
which was a big surprise. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Well,
That's
it was
so
played
unusual. I didn't
with
like.
smaller communities that couldn't talk to each other back in the day.
Yeah, which obviously made it a
Guides were
bit more
shit.
of a
There
hardcore
were almost
experience.
no meta builds. Everyone was playing their own homebrew for the most part.
Completely random stuff. That's good. That's the best.
It was
That's the best way to be.
it was more fun, but it was less refined, you know? It's like being a kid in the schoolyard versus being like a professional sports player, you know? Gaming grew up.
Yeah, gaming, dude. Big gaming.
Gaming, dude. Well,
Gaming.
Teapot, we've been at this for 3 hours. I can go longer, man. But do you got a day to start?
Nah, I'm good. I can go for as long as you want. You got anything else you want to ask? Hit me.
Oh,
Hit
baby.
me with the good
That's
stuff.
a
Throw me a
dangerous
curveball,
question
okay?
to ask. What the
Let's go,
fuck is
dude.
going on with build
You
templates?
build templates. There's okay. So I'm going to be very charitable to ArenaNet here, and I am going to give my charitable interpretation on what I think might have happened here.
Hmm.
To build
Would you
templates.
tell people
I
who don't know
think
what build templates are what they are real quick? Just a quick
so.
summary.
Build templates are essentially the ability to change your skill loadout very, very quickly without having to, manually change all your equipment pieces, that kind
Mhm.
of thing. That's kind of like the lowdown on what build templates are. Now, the problem with ArenaNet's implementation, there were actually a lot of things that caused problems and some friction with the community. But a big part of that was that it replaced a free alternative, right,
Arc
by
DPS.
a community member, Arc DPS,
Mhm.
and Arc DPS had superior functionality,
Yeah.
essentially. Less restricted functionality, I should say. Because to be fair, the ArenaNet build templates actually do have superior functionality. Like the instant swapping is really nice, and the free inventory slots are good too. But what happened here is that a lot of the developers were like, okay, we want to add build templates to the game. And what happened was that they took it to management, right, and said, okay, right, yeah, we want to add build templates to our video game. And then they said, okay, how are you going to make money off it? And the guys
Mhm.
were, well, I mean, it's a game feature. We don't make money off it. That's just, that's not how it is. And then they said, no. You've got to, you got to figure out how you're going to make money off this. Yeah, give me the money, right? And so they decided to design the system in a way that basically crippled it in its usability and its consumer friendliness. but allowed them to actually ship it, right? And I'm not making excuses here for ArenaNet, but I if the build templates weren't monetized in the way they are now, I very much doubt the feature would ever have arrived. And some people would say that this is worse than nothing because Arc DPS existed,
Yeah.
and that is a fair statement. I will not actually. I won't. I'll give you that. Right. You can have that if you want. However, um, that is what I think is actually the case. Right. Like this needed to be this way. And to kind of clarify exactly what we're talking about here with the monetization, essentially ArenaNet triple dipped on the monetization by adding an incredibly convoluted system that was very clearly designed solely around the idea that this was going to be monetized.
Mm-hmm.
There is
Until very mobile-ish.
absolutely there was no way any sane developer would design build templates the way that ArenaNet did, except if they were going to be monetized. And
Mm-hmm.
I get it. ArenaNet has to, they're a business, okay? But at the same time, I think you have to find that balance between making money and making a product that, is actually friendly to the
Consumer friendly.
consumer. And I don't think build templates are that. I think build templates are actually shockingly anti-consumer by ArenaNet standards because ArenaNet has always been a company that is very consumer friendly
Right.
and is all about making kind of a fair deal. And in a way, they kind of are. Because really, they're not going to set you back that much, I suppose. Even if you want to
What's
kind
it
of max
cost
out on them,
to max out a
right?
character?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to give you the number off the top of my head.
Anyone in chat know?
But build templates, I mean, how like build templates, it will probably cost you like 4K gems to do a full character, I guess, or something
Okay.
in that
That's
in
kind of a
that kind
lot.
of in that kind of it's probably more than that to like fully max out, but you don't like need to like
Yeah.
max.
Like, so
Um,
I've never used the feature, but I've read about it. There's the three parts that are monetized are the actual gear selection, right? What gear you're wearing,
yep.
and that includes things like legendary stat configurations and runes and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And then the second part is your trait arrangement, traits and skills, right?
Yep.
What's the third part?
The third part is then the ability to store templates as well. Because Arena had the bright idea that they were going to limit the amount of build templates you can have to 6 per character, which is not the brightest idea, I'm not going to lie, because it turns out some characters kind of require more than that. Particularly if you
If you're
the,
doing
the
all,
real kicker, the real kicker is if you play more than one game mode. It
yeah.
actually works out kind of okay if you only play one game mode,
Hmm.
but you have a lot of problems. You have a lot of problems if you play more than one game mode.
Sure. Like if you do
That's where
rating
you
and
get
world versus world on one character.
yeah,
Yeah, I used
yeah,
to
that's
have
where
like 4, 5, or 6 different loadouts on my warrior for rating. Using Arc back in the day when I was still doing that. And I probably only used 2 or 3 mainly, and the other 3 were kind of like edge case, kind of encounter specific. But or I would have one that was kind of like my comfort open world build that I would use. Um, it sounds like porting all that functionality into the build template system I would be out like the cost of a AAA game almost.
yeah, and that's the price of not having a sub fee, and I don't really begrudge that. Like I don't okay, this might be a bit of a hot take for the girls again. I don't mind that they monetize build templates. I'm actually kind of okay with it. Like what I don't like is that they obviously designed it and gimped the system, and what I don't like is that they made it deliberately worse because they needed to monetize it. Right? Okay, like when I think of Arena, I like to think of this company that does its best, right, and always ships the best possible product.
Hmm.
When build templates shipped, it was obvious that they literally made it worse on purpose,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of like when a company gets exposed for planned obsolescence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They deliberately made a product worse so they could sell you an upgrade later on, right?
Right.
Like that's what irked me about build templates. If they'd sold an amazing system, account-wide build template slots that you can just unlock as many as you like. You can buy up to like 10 or 15 or whatever, how many, let's say, no problem.
Mhm.
I'd even be okay with selling that at a higher price, right? Because they sell them for like 400 gems right now. I'd been if they had been account wide, I think having that at 1,000 gems would have actually been fair enough.
Yeah.
Right? Would they have got community outrage from that? Yes. Should build templates be free? Yes. Okay, but look, guys, this isn't a sub fee game, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't going to get monetized, right? That's just the reality of the situation. I'm not excusing it, okay? But bear in mind, okay, and this is where I win, and this is where I get to be very smug. I've always advocated for a subscription fee in MMOs, and one of my favorite things about logging into old school MMOs is that you pay the subscription fee and you log in, and there are no
I
microtransactions
totally
in a lot of
agree.
the old school MMOs.
I totally agree. And you know
Uh,
what else, you know what I love
and
about it? And you probably agree with this, is it creates a funnel. It creates a funnel, and the people who aren't actually committed to the experience, you don't have
they
to deal
get
with
out.
them. They can fuck off and go play Candy Crush.
Whoa, that's a little bit toxic there, buddy. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious me.
I don't know anyone else who
Uh,
plays that game, so I don't know, maybe it's something great there.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course you're completely right here. I agree with this with the sentiment. But yeah,
Isn't that part of being the anti-MMO, though, to not have a sub fee?
um, yes, it is. It is, but I think it really actually it works against ArenaNet's interest, in my opinion. Well,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It makes their game worse. So
Yeah.
the thing is though, and this is a harsh reality that you're really confronted with when you play when you do anything, right? Okay, these companies are not your friends. They want your money. And ArenaNet are not here to make the best game possible. They're here to make the most money possible. And by the way, I don't want, I'm not throwing shade at Arena. So is Blizzard, by the way. Okay, Blizzard, they don't give a fuck, right? They
That's the way the
want your
entire
money.
world
Activision
works.
Blizzard want your money, right? Okay, they aren't here to make you happy, make the best game. They want to get those dollars out of your wallet into their bank account, right? Simple as that. It's very, very straightforward. And the only reason why the build templates really upset me because it was very much a mask off moment. It was,
Mm.
oh, this is a company, isn't it? Right? Oh, yeah, they want my money, and they've made their product worse because they want my money. And the only way they can do that is by making the product worse,
Do you
and
remember
also removing the free alternative as well.
yeah. Remember back when Path of Fire was still fresh, and they came out with the mount loot box, and there was a community uproar, and they responded by giving a mount selection box for slightly more?
Yeah, and ArenaNet does occasionally have their they occasionally have their moments where they do make a mistake, right? And you know I suppose, accidentally reveal more than they perhaps want to.
You mean, like, with regard
Uh,
to the consumer friendliness of their of,
yeah, yeah, I
where
think
they
they
go to
have a
your wallet?
reputation. They have a reputation for being very, very consumer friendly, but occasionally a few things do pop up that are a bit, not so good, right? Like the loot box thing was one of them, and Charles, they would have kept. Look, I'm just gonna say it, guys. Like, this, I'm off the chain now, boys. Like, ArenaNet would have kept doing that if they hadn't got called out by literally the entire game industry.
Jim
They
Sterling,
they
too.
they got Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably, he's the real one you gotta watch out for, absolutely, right? Like, when Jim Sterling's on you, you're fucked, right? You're in trouble, at that point, and, yeah, there have been a few Arena does have a good track record for this, but, yeah, sometimes they do make some pretty questionable decisions, like build templates, the loot boxes, very aggressive cosmetic monetization in the game there as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
it is a big feels bad man, right? There's no question of that. It's not ideal.
What's the state of the
Now
Black Lion chest these days?
the Black Lion chest, yeah, that's Arena has kind of said they've really, I mean, Arena has like really gone mask off on this. Like, they don't give a fuck, dude. Like, they will put skins that are legendary weapon tier in the cash shop without blinking an eye. Okay, like, it is what it is, right? Look, it's a microtransaction game. Like, what do you expect? Like, I shouldn't be, I should never be surprised with this, right? Because it's exactly what you would expect. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I'm still salty that there's no way to earn like mount skins or gliders. Well, I guess gliders, they were the
Yeah.
legendary gliders, right?
And this is ArenaNet's trump card. And to be fair, it is a good trump card. Like the thing about Guild Wars 2 is that in theory you don't have to spend real money. You can get all
Hmm.
of this stuff by, just by grinding
By
gold.
farming
Like
away.
you just by permanently farming gold. That you can absolutely do that. And that's a good thing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, that is actually something that should be
But
praised about ArenaNet.
doesn't
But
that
the
feed
problem,
back into the negative phenomenon of encouraging blind, dumb players doing auto attack and open world content?
yes, just it encourages blind farming and just doing that. But it's a bit worse than that. I think it really devalues the actual in-game rewards, right? Because let's take an example. Let's do classic WoW again, right? Like I got Thunder Fury, right, which is a legendary sword, and
Blessed
it was
Blade of the
hype.
Windseeker.
It
Oh
had
yeah.
an epic quest chain. I had to farm a disgusting amount of gold. It involved multiple raids, right? Like, we had to kill a giant raid boss to actually finish the job. That was epic. I will remember that for a very, very long time,
That's a good one.
probably forever. Okay. But when I got Incinerator in Guild Wars 2, I bought it off the trading post for about 1,000 gold because it was a long time ago, right? That
Yeah.
wasn't that exciting, right? Like, that doesn't feel very legendary to me,
Well,
right?
classic is
And
such a sorry, finish your point.
but the point is that having rewards and having rewards and items and loot attached to the in-game world has merit. It has a lot of merit, actually. I think if you
Mhm.
disconnect the reward structure of the game from the gameplay itself, all you end up doing is just incentivizing players to grind the most efficient, mindless content possible, which
Mhm.
is boring for the player, gets people burnt out, and it makes your game worse as
Mhm.
well. And yeah, not good, okay? Because it makes your rewards kind of meaningless, right? Like,
Mhm.
you want your rewards to have a bit of story behind them.
Yes.
You want to have the adventure, the MMO. You don't want to feel like you're playing a trading post, right? That's how you get your rewards. You grind the game and then you go outside the game to get the rewards. No, the rewards and the content and the story should be in the game, not outside of the game.
Amen, brother.
And that's kind of that's my fundamental issue with a lot of the way the rewards should, and perhaps perhaps this is maybe one of the reasons why I find the rewards to be so meaningless in Guild Wars, right?
Mhm.
It could be this.
Well,
It's
it's completely
because
subverted.
yeah, it is subverted, right? None of them have any value to me because you can just, you can just buy them, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would I care about that? Like, there
Yeah.
is no reason I would care
My
about that.
my theory about this is and it's not that terribly well refined, but what I love about WoW Classic is that there's an actual like social dominance hierarchy when it comes to cosmetics in that game because getting certain things means something. To your point about Thunder Fury, you cannot buy the Thunder Fury skin off the auction house. You cannot buy it from Blizzard directly. At least maybe you can in retail. I don't know. When you walk around with that, you both experience something that brought you together with other players to do something that was not easy, and you have a totem of your journey to carry with you that other players can see. That's what WoW always nailed for me.
Yeah, prestige, right? You have some prestige to go with your nice shiny items, right?
And that's him.
It's all well and good having a shiny item, but if the shiny item doesn't mean anything, then it fucking sucks, right? It's no good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of for me why I lost the thread of Guild Wars after my legendary armor because that was actually a really good goal. And it was actually kind of a fun journey. And there's all kinds of Heart of Thorns content that really seemed like it was pointing towards that kind of game, right? There was the original implementation of the Gen 2 legendaries with the crazy involved quest lines, right?
Mhm.
Um, I guess there was a question when raids came out about whether or not about what the rewards were going to be for those. And I remember when the River of Souls glider hit the trading post, being like, "Oh, okay, So you're not gonna get that kind of shit from raids. I think the first time I
Nope.
remember seeing that, I guess there were a few like weapon skins and whatever. Um, Nothing that really stands out. But the first thing that stood out to me as a raid reward that was kind of meaningful was the Doom Throne. Is the Doom Throne tradable on the trading post? I don't remember.
It is indeed, I'm
Ah,
afraid.
shit.
It is indeed.
What's it cost?
It's actually not that expensive
I
anymore.
should pick one up.
I've never seen it drop, by the way. I've literally never seen it drop. It hurts, man. Like, uh,
Seriously? How many times
I've
have you
done, yeah,
killed
I've
him?
done too many, right? And I still haven't got it as a drop, man. It's unbelievable. Like, I am never lucky, dude. I am never ever rubber ducky.
300 gold. I could easily pay that. I could easily buy enough gems to convert to that much gold. No problem. Boom.
Boom, indeed. Go get them.
Pay to progress. Fuck.
Yeah.
Shit.
It's not ideal, is it? It's not exactly what you want to see.
Oh.
But that's how it goes. What are you gonna do about it, man? What are you gonna do about it?
And
Absolutely nothing.
you don't need a lot from a game you already like, you know? I already like Guild Wars. You obviously do. That's my feeling. I'm looking over
Yeah,
the
I do
topic
like it
list here,
too.
Teapot. Anything else that you want to talk about, man? You're
I
on a
think we talked
roll.
about talked about a hell of a lot. I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But if you got anything else, I'll do it. I'll talk about anything. I'm a gamer, dude. I'm a
You are,
gamer.
man.
I'm
Maybe we should do
getting
this again. But
anytime,
okay.
dude.
So,
Well,
okay. Here's a follow-up question from anytime. I can tell you mean that when you say it because it's what 8:45 in the morning where you are, and we
it's
started at
6:46
yeah,
right now.
and we started at 3 o'clock your time. So yeah, absolute gamer here, ladies and gents. Okay, some hot take kind of questions from my list here. Cantha expansion, next expansion or last expansion?
Last expansion. I think this is it. I think this really is it for Guild Wars 2 for realsies this time.
Guild Wars
That you
3. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Guild Wars 3 I actually think is very likely, and it will probably be what they'll try and catapult into using the expansion. They'll try and leave us on a very much, oh yeah, come and play our next game kind of thing. You might not see Guild Wars 3 for a while though. I think it's going to be Guild Wars 2 final expansion with Cantha. It is
Hmm.
the final continent as well, bonus meme there. And then after that, they're going to go ahead and do their console game. ArenaNet will do their console game, whatever
Hmm.
that is. So I'm going to have to get a console
Probably have
to play
PvP
that,
stuff.
which will be an exciting. And then after that, then they'll do Guild Wars 3.
Okay. So that was my next question: is fresh IP or same IP? Sounds like you think they're going to keep doing Guild Wars stuff.
Fresh IP for the console game, same IP for Guild Wars 3.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Let's see what else. Will there be an ERP 4?
ERP4, very unlikely. I'd probably change the name. It would almost feel wrong to do it under the same name at this point. ERP was a very what is the word? Time locked, right? Like that. It was very much of its time, right?
Hmm.
And I don't think ERP4 even makes sense at this point. It will be a different thing. It will be like basically the same thing but renamed. I would love to do another raid event and some more raid events. They're some of the best experiences I've ever had, and ERP3 probably is still the thing I'm most proud of.
Hmm.
In my streaming career,
Beautiful
my gaming
events.
career,
Consumed all that shit. It's
and
so good.
I obviously want to do better, even better next time, make an even better event.
What kind of
But yeah,
viewership did you pull in those events?
ERB3 had 17,000 viewers. It peaked
Fuck,
at.
man.
Yeah,
How does that
quite
compare with
impressive.
like the old Guild Wars 2 ESL games? Do you have a sense?
I believe ERP3, and I think this is true. It might not have been more than the really early days, but I mean, the world championship for Guild Wars 2 is something like 13,000 or 14,000 viewers.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think it's one of the most highly viewed Guild Wars 2 competitive events of all time, if not the most.
That's
I'm not
amazing.
completely sure on that, but I think that is actually accurate.
Yeah, that's incredible, dude. What an achievement. Bravo, honestly. Um, this is part of why I called you in my hype tweet the uncrowned hype train conductor of Guild Wars 2, because despite I think all of your valid critique of the game, you are what I feel like you are what we have right now in terms of leading the Guild Wars community.
I
You
do
are
my
the
best.
loudest voice.
Yeah, I do yell quite a lot. I won't
And
deny it.
you're actually passionate.
Yeah, I really like the game. For all that I will criticize the game, I will roast the game, but it all comes from a place of love, and I want the game to be as good as it can be.
Amen to
And yeah,
that.
and I will do my best with raid events there. But yeah, I'll come up with a brand new name, or maybe I'll just call it ERP4. Watch my Twitter for an ominous giant 4, or I do it as an IV because I'm a role player.
Right, right. Well, I'll look forward to that. Well, I think that I'm going to call it there, Teapot. This has been way more fun than even I thought it was going to be. Um, thanks for staying up.
Oh, no worries, man.
Where can people find you? Not that anyone here doesn't know.
Oh, well, you can do that if you really want to. You can find me. It's very, very easy. Just Mighty Teapot, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, boom, live basically every day. Depends on the weather, right? I might be roasting the game, I might be praising the game, I might be angry, I might be sad, okay? I might be overjoyed and full of energy. Who knows, right? That's why you've got to tune into the stream and find out. Okay, find out what version of me you're gonna get on a given day, right? Get some different takes there, get some different opinions from different versions of myself. But yes, go and watch all that stuff, guys. Every game mode, commentary, memes, okay? Enjoy. Okay, just do that.
The
And yeah,
many
thanks for having me on.
flavors of Teapot. Hell yeah.
Many flavors indeed. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun, as usual. And of course, anytime. I mean, anytime for realsies. Okay, I'll stay up for Guild Wars 2. Don't worry about that. I'm always around. I have absolutely no life. It's a true story right there. It's actually a
Just
true
sign of the
story.
times.
But yeah, be definitely sure to follow the stream as well, guys. And you never know, you might catch me here again sometime if I'm awake anyway. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it, dude.
L- Absolute pleasure. For those who are just getting to know me, I'll just do this really quick. Um, I'm Deeg. I do a podcast. This is the podcast. It's called Basementside Chats. We do it live here on Twitch. I talk to people like Teapot. I talk to developers. Last week I talked to the lead developer of PlanetSide 2, and lots more to come. I'm also trying to stream some video games, and I think I'm actually going to be doing some Guild Wars 2. I think actually right now after I say goodbye to Teapot and let him get some sleep. So stick around for that. And my socials are here on the video. You can see them. This will all be on YouTube later, and maybe on Reddit where people can yell at it. That's it.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. I'm gonna go get a drink. I'll be back in a minute.
All right. Incredible. Incredible gaming.